Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and that will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat U gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat U ons sal help om al ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan U op te dra. Sikelela lezwa letu nabantu balo, umusile ukulungo kwepondo letu. Nkosi sikelela iAfrika, thina abantwana bayo, kokela inkokheli zayo, yaniki upolo iAfrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. Please be seated. Good afternoon, honorable members and guests in the gallery. Honorable members, I have to announce that due to the cessation of party membership of Mr. D.G. Jacobs, a vacancy occurred in the representation of the National Coloured Congress in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Before I proceed, I would like to remind members of some of the logistical arrangements, procedural arrangements. As has been our practice to date, honourable members will participate in the sitting of the House, both from here in the chamber, with the presiding officer and the table staff, and via Microsoft Teams. Our standing rules have accordingly been amended to accommodate such hybrid sittings. Honourable members, the quorum requirements for the sitting of the House are provided for in the Constitution of the Western Cape and the standing rules. Unless there is an indication of unanimous concurrence, voting will be confined to members present in the House and on the hybrid system who are entitled to cast their votes as per the ATC issued on the 11th of August 2020. Members present in the chamber and via Microsoft Teams have all the privileges and immunities, my apologies, imparted by law. Honourable members who are considered out of order by the presiding officer will have their microphones muted and called to order. Honourable members, the Sergeant at Arms will record members' attendance. Honourable members, I wish to remind you that you are also able to participate virtually and that you need to use the hand raise functionality if you want to draw my attention to a point of order. Honourable members who are participating in the sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams, I please request that you do not sign into Microsoft Teams on more than one device. The media have also been granted access to the MS Teams meeting as guests of the WCPP. However, I wish to remind the members of the press that they may not use the chat room or speak or activate their cameras while the sitting is in progress. Honourable members, as per usual, for this sitting, language translation services are available in the chamber as usual and on Microsoft Teams via the respective channels. Honourable members, I wish to lastly remind you that no interjections are permitted during these hybrid sittings, and to this end, I wish to draw your attention to Rule 40 of our standing rules. I recognise the Chief Whip.
Good afternoon, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 20, subsection 1, that precedence be given to the executive statement. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved by the Chief Whip? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable members, I will then recognise the Honourable Minister of Mobility, Minister Seleko, in terms of Rule 146 to make an executive statement. I want to just, before you proceed, wish to remind all political parties that in terms of the rules, you will have an opportunity to respond to the executive statements for no more than 3 minutes. I now recognise the Honourable Minister, Minister Seleko.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the Western Cape Government, I would like to extend our deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of those who have lost their lives to the senseless violence in the minibus taxi industry. Our thoughts are with those who have been injured, traumatized, and displaced, and we wish those in hospital a speedy recovery. It is our working class and most vulnerable residents, those who rely on taxis because they have no other choice, who suffer most as bullets fly in our streets. The very lifeline of our public transport system has become a battleground. And it is the poor who pay the heaviest price. For the past 3 months, the people of Somerset West and surrounding areas have been forced to live under the shadow of violence, of violent clashes between rival taxi associations. Armed attacks, illegal blockages, and deadly standoffs have claimed the lives of operators, drivers, and innocent commuters. Just in recent days, Speaker, people were killed in Philippi East, Khayelitsha, and Makassar. These are communities that already carry heavy burdens, now faced to live with fear on their way to work, school, or home. Speaker, this violence erodes public safety, disrupts livelihoods, and undermines confidence in the taxi industry. Let me be clear, Somlomo. Government cannot and will not tolerate the use of violence to settle disputes. At the heart of this conflict is a long-standing dispute between Qatar and Codeta over operations in Somerset West, particularly the M18 route. What began as a regulatory matter has spiraled into open conflict between defections of members, competition over loading areas, and disregard for agreements. If unchecked, Somlomo, it risks destabilizing the industry far beyond the borders of Somerset West. Speaker, we have responded decisively. On the 25th of August, SAPS closed the Somerset West rank for 24 hours to stabilize the area in terms of the powers granted under the South African Police Services Act 68 of 1995. I must share with the House, Speaker, no further shootings were reported during that particular period. The rank has since been reopened, but I have initiated the Section 91 process in terms of the NLTA, which is the National Land Transport Act, to close specific affected routes and linked lanes. This measure, Speaker, is a last resort and is not being finalized for publication. I've just signed the notice and it will go for gazetting, and probably by tomorrow it will be put out. The Provincial Taxi Registrar has issued a Section 7820 notice in terms of Section 7 of the Western Cape Road Transportation Act, Law 98 of 1996. The inquiry, Speaker, is expected to be held on the 3rd of September and may result in suspension or deregistration of associations or operators in breach of the Code of Conduct of taxi operators. The department has approached the High Court for an urgent interdict. The affidavit I signed yesterday was sent online yesterday to restrain intimidation, unlawful operations, and interference by external associations. Speaker, I'm glad to share with you, with the House, proceedings are currently before the court as we speak. Should closures be necessary, Somlomo, a contingency transport plan is in place to protect commuters and to ensure no worker, learner, or resident is left stranded. SAPS and law enforcement remain active in hotspots, including Somerset West, Khayelitsha, Philippi, Mfuleni, and will remain until stability is secured. Speaker, while we act firmly to protect lives and uphold the law, the door for peace is not closed. At the Taxi Peace Summit, leaders pledged to prioritize safety and stability in the taxi industry. It is unfortunate that some have betrayed that commitment. but those who honor it will find government ready to work with them for lasting peace and transformation. The taxi industry carries more than 75% of our commuters on a daily basis. For millions of workers, students, women, and children, it is not just transport, it is a lifeline. That lifeline cannot be allowed to become a debt trap. Speaker, the Western Cape government is resolute. The safety of commuters is non-negotiable. Ek herhaal, die veiligheid van ons mense in ons provinsie is nie onderhandelbaar nie. Ukhuseleko labantu beli phondo is not negotiable. Violence will never be condoned in this province. Those who choose conflict over dialogue will face the full weight of the law. Nothing can justify bloodshed. The only way forward, Somlomo, is dialogue, accountability, and respect for the rule of law. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Minister. Honourable members, in terms of Rule 146, I have granted the permission for that executive statement to be delivered in the House in the interest of the people of this province and in the interest of members of this House. I will now afford political parties an opportunity to respond to the executive statement if they so wish, and I recognize the ANC.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Honourable members, today I rise on behalf of the ANC caucus in the Western Cape to condemn, in the strongest terms possible, all those who are either actively involved in or complicit in this renewed wave of violence within the minibus taxi industry. The violence continues to claim innocent lives, destabilize our communities, and weaken an economy that is already fragile. This government is complicit of the current wave of violence and must take full responsibility. To believe that closure of ranks is a solution is yet another evidence of void of leadership in this province. Speaker, a decade ago, the then Premier of the Western Cape, Rasool, commissioned an independent inquiry led by Advocate Nsebeza. The purpose of the inquiry and its findings were clear, instructive, and remain highly relevant even today. The Commission sought to achieve three important objectives. One, investigate the underlying causes of the persistent violence in the industry, to identify the individuals and groups instigating or responsible for the violence, and to establish the structural and institutional factors contributing to the conflict. Speaker, the Commission revealed a wide range of patterns which today are still relevant: a culture of lawlessness, a culture of fear and silence, a culture of entitlement, the attitude by some operators that once they apply for a permit, it must automatically be granted, exorbitant association, weak law enforcement and direction of duty by institutions such as the City of Cape Town, which abandon taxi ranks to associations, dysfunctional operating boards, a widespread use of hit squad by Carter and Cordella, coupled with a failure to arrest and prosecute those who sponsor and fund killings. Speaker and honorable members, the Commission concluded with a list of urgent recommendations to be implemented by government through the Office of the Premier, and among them, they include the establishment of semi-permanent dispute resolution body, independent yet accountable to the Provincial Transport Department Taxi Registry, to mediate dispute between associations, to comprehensive review of the Provincial Operating License Board with a view of overhaul its working methods and internal controls. Immediate discontinuation of cut and quarter patrols along highways, the formation of multidisciplinary investigative team comprising SAPS, SARS, NPA, the intelligence and NIA, to pursue taxi warlords, investigate the killings and address a related crimes such as taxi evasion, a joint task teams of SAPS, provincial government, the City of Cape Town, City Port to manage disputes between owners and associations, supported by development of an early warning system shared by all role players. Speaker, had this been implemented by this neoliberal DA-led provincial government, we will not be witnessing the current wave of violence and the senseless
Honourable
killing
member,
of
please
innocent
conclude. Your
commuters
time
and
has
drivers.
expired.
Chair, To minibus taxi industry, you must accept two truths. Firstly, you betrayed your own peace summit resolution. You failed to learn from the 2021
Thank you very much,
Belvedere
honourable
debate, the
member.
consequence of which still
Thank
haunt
you
you
very
today.
much,
The
honourable
ANC is
member.
available to facilitate
Thank you
any
very
dialogue.
much.
Thank
Can
you,
the
Chair.
table staff please mute the honourable member? Thank you very much. Honourable members, I generally allow you leeway to conclude your sentence. There's rules that guides how time is allotted to political parties. And when I call you to order or call you to remind you that your time has expired, please adhere to that call. I now recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Speaker, indeed, the order paper cannot sorry. Sorry, Speaker, I had a flu. Can I have my time back? I need to drink water.
You cannot get your time back, but I can stop the clock. Doesn't work like that, unfortunately, honourable member.
Okay.
You may continue.
Okay. So the order paper cannot just follow a normal routine and things become normal in the circumstances when there's no peace on the street. Therefore, I want to welcome that you have allowed this debate to happen. Over just the past weekend and this week, shootings were reported in Khayelitsha, Philippi East, Makaza, Somersworth, and Strand. Speaker, in the interest of the anti-SARA, a mother, a worker, a grandmother who depends on a minibus taxi to get to work, to the clinic, or to the mall, she does not have the financial means to choose another form of transport. Yet, at any moment, she could find herself caught in the crossfire of bullets that were never meant for her, but fired in the ongoing disputes within the minibus taxi industry. This is simply unacceptable. Commuter safety must be prioritized in an industry that carries the overwhelming majority of our residents every single day. Taxi violence has already claimed far too many lives. Just this week, so that we can get the picture, in Strand, a woman transporting children was shot at. In Makaza, an 8-year-old boy was wounded along with 2 other residents. In the Philippi East, 3 civilians were injured. 1 innocent life lost is already one too many, and the trauma for survivors and their families is immeasurable. We must also recognize the economic impact this surge of violence has on the province. The minibus taxi industry is worth more than 7 billion rands. Every shooting disrupts workers trying to get to jobs, children going to school, small traders moving goods, and businesses relying on staff to arrive safely. Routes shut down, productivity stalls, communities lose income. At its core, this violence undermines the stability of our provincial economy. Speaker, to address this crisis, every stakeholder must play its part. Government, law enforcement, taxi associations themselves, government must do whatever it takes, even if it means making tough and unpopular decisions. Member Nganzu, if taxi ranks must be closed to restore order, then the law must take its course. Yes, this will not be easy because of people like the anti-SARAs. Taxis remain their only mode of transport. But Speaker, if lives continue to be lost, if our economy continues to be disrupted, then the cost of inaction will be far greater than the cost of decisive action. Speaker, through you to every citizen, the safety of our people, of every commuter, must always come first. Therefore, that's why we want the department to expedite the implementation of the National Land Transport in order to formalize the taxi industry so that it doesn't only monopolize. We should include the buses, the e-hailing, and everything.
Honourable member, your time has expired. Please conclude. Thank you very much. I now recognize the Patriotic Alliance.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and good afternoon to everyone. Speaker, let me not repeat what the MEC already said, but let me be unequivocal. This violence is unacceptable. It threatens lives, disrupts livelihoods, and undermines public trust in the rule of law. These acts are no longer just disputes between associations. They are direct assaults on innocent commuters and communities. We must stand firm. The South African Police Services must expedite investigations, leave no stone unturned, and arrest those responsible. The Western Cape government's use of Section 7A20 inquiry notice must be rigorously enforced. Entities found in violation of regulations must face swift consequences, including the suspension of licenses and closure of roads or routes. I urge the associations to immediately recommit to sustained and mediated peace efforts. This is not time for political infighting, but for reconciliation in the interest of public safety. In parallel, we must urgently restore trust and service reliability for commuters. Alternative transport options, heightened security measures at taxi ranks, and immediate reopening of safe transport hubs should be prioritized. Today, I call on this House to join me in condemning these violent acts and insisting on concrete actions, zero tolerance for violence, accountability from our enforcement agencies, and peace negotiations that protect lives and livelihoods. The public deserve safe, reliable, and uninterrupted transport. Their safety must be upheld without failure. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the EFF.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, whilst the EFF does not condone the recent taxi violence incidents that continue to place the lives of innocent people and commuters at risk, this provincial government led by the DA must take accountability and full responsibility for what is currently happening within the taxi industry in this province. And whilst the provincial government spend millions of taxpayers' money each year heavily subsidizing the Golden Arrow bus services, those in the taxi industry have been left out in the cold. Speaker, furthermore, whilst there was progress made a few years ago under the leadership of the former Transport and Public Works Minister, as he then was, Mr. Pungikosi Madikizela, with the Blue Dot Initiative, however, things took a sharp curve following his removal. Speaker, as the leadership that followed reversed all progress made and thereby instigated turmoil within the taxi industry. In conclusion, the taxi industry also deserves the same financial assistance granted to the privately owned Golden Arrow bus services. And if this government continues to favor only one transport system financially and deprive the other, this will only deepen the already strained transport industry in this province. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize the Freedom Front Plus.
Baie dankie, Speaker. Speaker, I support the measures announced by the Honourable Minister, but more must be done. We cannot stop there. The Western Cape is desperately in need of a reliable and safe transport for our commuters. Can the minibus taxi industry meet the standards and the requirements to provide safe and reliable transport? And they must answer that question. They must answer the question if they're serious about being part of providing reliable transport. There must be a formal and a multilateral agreement in place to which they must be held accountable with legal consequences if they do not uphold their end of the agreement. How many and which recommendations emanating from the 2005 recommendations by the Commission of Inquiry report has been implemented or not is the question. Taxis are needed, but we don't need their violence and we don't need their crime. We need them to cooperate. We call for a Bill of Commuter Rights to be drafted by the department and an anonymous complaints line to be set up to report rogue and illegal behavior of taxis. Now, public trust in the South African police is dwindling. It has been damaged. And there is doubts whether the South African police can resolve this through talks and police intervention alone. The Western Cape government has a duty to fulfill, and it must lead the process of restoring peace and stability of taxi routes. The Freedom Front Plus calls for an end to the taxi violence, and if temporary suspension of route permits will lead to the restoration of peace and stability, then it must be considered and it must be done. It was done before. Solutions must include regulating the sector more stringently and professionalizing the service. Speaker, if they want to be part of the future transport system, we need that in place. There is just too much smoke among taxis. Smoke in the sense that there are links to gangs that is concerning. And we need that to be cleared up in the public interest. The Freedom Front Plus condemns the taxi violence, and we ask for peace to be restored in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Baie dankie, agbare lid. I recognize the Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and good afternoon. And good afternoon to all the colleagues. Speaker, the Al-Jamaa, we condemn in the strongest terms all form of violence. And we want to express our sincere condolences to all the parties involved that have lost their lives and those who were injured. Speaker, we want to urge and we want to encourage all stakeholders to come to the table and resolve these issues in a peaceful manner. I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the ACDP wants to extend our condolences to those families who lost loved ones. And we also want to, as the ACDP, condemn all the perpetrators who is involved in violence in the taxi industry. In Macassar, the surrounding areas like Kailicha, Philippi, Somerset West, and Strand. We also, as the ACDP, want to thank the South African Police Services, the Western Cape Government, and the City of Cape Town for the action they took to restore peace in the at the taxi rank. Mr. Speaker, I am saddened this morning when I saw on television how Hilton Williams, the late Hilton Williams, and his mother, elderly mother, was interviewed. And his mother said, when he left, she was half asleep, but he always said to her, "Mommy, I must go to work. I cannot stay at home." And that same Hilton lost his life on Tuesday morning at the taxi rank on his way to work. Sad, sad, sad. But I also want to agree with Minister Seleko. I saw in the paper, he said that in the media, he was saying that his first duty is to protect the commuters. No one has the right, he said, to endanger the lives of ordinary people trying to get to work, school, or home. Let me be clear, violence will never be rewarded. And that is the stance we must take, Speaker. We must stand up, and the first duty is to make sure that our commuters are safe. I also read further where the Premier said a couple of things that we need to bring law and order. But, Speaker, this is a collective effort. Communities, the taxi industry, all spheres of government will have to come together to have lasting peace. And the people are crying for peace. So, Speaker, on behalf of the ACDP, we will assist and help. And I think that is the role of us as public reps. Not to point fingers now and to blame one another, but to look at solutions that's sustainable, that will kill this taxi violence immediately. And the perpetrators that do not want to come to the table, they must be brought to book. Those who are killing others must be brought to book, because as the people need the taxi industry, they need the taxis to get to work. People must realize our economy is already struggling, and with people not going to work, we are in deep, deep trouble. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I just for the record is going to recognise good, but I have been informed that we have received an apology from the Honourable Heron. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of the executive statement as granted in terms of Rule 146. We will now move on to interpellations as printed on the question paper in terms of Rule 100 97. And I recognize the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Economic Development and Tourism, Honourable Minister Dr. Meyer.
Honourable Speaker, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to Honourable Member Nkondlo for this question. I think this is a very important question, given what is happening in different parts of South Africa, but also globally. The issue of food security is very important, and I want to thank her for bringing this subject matter to the House through this interpellation. The Department's Food Security Sub-Program supports vulnerable communities and households with the means to produce own food. These interventions take the form of community or school gardens, as well as household gardens, aimed at promoting food and nutrition security through own production. We have also launched the One Home, One Garden initiative to encourage own food production in affected communities, and this is also anchored by the skills training, which is the foundation of the sustainability program. However, it must be noted that the South African food insecurity challenges are not tied to the lack of production, but is also rather an access issue due to the levels of unemployment, which limits access to already available food. It is for this reason that the Western Cape government's Growth for Jobs strategy had set an ambitious targets for growth and jobs, and remains our apex priority in this Western Cape government. Honourable Speaker, when any councillor on this side or on that side of the House or in the audience asks me, how can we help them in their communities, or even the staff sitting here, my first call of duty is to say, where's this area? How can we help? But my first priority is, where is there a dumping site? Then I work with the local councillor, irrespective of which political party, because we serve the citizens of the Western Cape. And I work with the local councillor, then we do a soil analysis, then we do a water analysis, and I encourage members of this House to please make contact with us, because if there's a dumping site, I regard that as a perfect place to clean it, to make sure that there's adequate water. We can drill water, but we don't want municipal water, because we don't want the people to have a bill. And so we are happy to further roll it out wherever the need exists. And I want to thank the honourable member bringing this matter of food insecurity. As I said, it is not the matter of the production, it is a matter of accessibility. But Honourable Speaker, this matter is so serious to this government that the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness is chairing an interministerial committee on food security. One of my ministerial priorities is also food security and nutrition, because we also look at the nutritional value of the food that is available. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I recognize the Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable Nkondlo, you must just indicate if you need the podium. My apologies, colleagues, for the rest of the sitting. If you need the podium, please just indicate to one of the staff, and we'll make sure you have it.
Thank you, Somlom. The Western Cape is a province blessed with rich agricultural land, from the wheat fields of the Overberg to the vineyards of Stellenbosch and the fruit valleys of Ceres. Agriculture here is not only a key driver of economic growth, but should be a strategic tool to fight poverty and hunger. Mandela said, open quote, poverty is not an accident. Like slavery, it is a man-made and can be removed by actions of human beings, close quote. Which is why, Minister, we have to spotlight inefficiencies in the food security value chain. And important, as you've just said, you know, that looking at also the quality of food that gets right into the end user, particularly into our stores, in our programs, nutrition programs, as you mentioned, and I think government is spending a lot of money on nutrition that must go to schools. And I'm not sure to the extent who monitors that the actual plate that is provided to the learners on a day-to-day basis is actually that nutritional value. So these are conversations that are very important for all of us to deal with this situation. The SERI Food Insecurity Report 2023, drawing from Census 2022 and the General Household Survey, shows that 23.1% of households nationally experience inadequate or severely inadequate access to food. In the province, the picture is equally dire. 1 in 5 households, which is 20.6%, is food insecure, and 12% report experiencing hunger. In certain rural municipalities such as Laingsburg, Beaufort West, Swellendam, and Piketberg, households have reported children and adults going to bed hungry or even enduring entire days without food. And this is a province that prides itself on being the breadbasket of South Africa. The irony could not be more stark. While the province accounts for nearly 25.5% of all agricultural jobs in the country and generates billions annually in agricultural output, its own farm workers and working class residents cannot afford nutritious food. It is unacceptable that in a province so central to South Africa's food production, the very people who produce our food go to bed hungry and starving, which is why we must spotlight on our food production inefficiencies and what collectively we can do to deal with this as an emergency. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Nkondlo. I recognize the Honourable Masipa.
Honourable Speaker, I want to acknowledge the exceptional work being done by the Department of Agriculture here in the Western Cape, and also to welcome and congratulate Minister for successfully hosting KZN Minister of Agriculture and Department in this week on their benchmarking exercise with the best Department of Agriculture in the country. Through CASIDRA, the department has implemented over 7,400 household and community food security projects across the province. That includes 2,933 household-level initiatives and 161 community projects, while also clearing a backlog of more than 4,300 projects from previous years. These projects are putting food on the table, creating resilience and giving rural families a lifeline in tough economic situations. However, Speaker, there is a challenge that continues to frustrate the small agricultural producers, the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program funding being allocated as Schedule 5 grant. This structure creates delays in transferring funds, with submissions having to be done a year in advance. This creates immense pressure on emerging farmers who need assistance urgently. We know from experience that CAS functioned far better as a Schedule 4 grant, where provinces had more flexibility to act quickly and decisively. So the question to the Minister is, given the proven success of your department in implementing food security programs, how is CAS funding affecting your work in reaching more food gardens to deal with food insecurity in the province? I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Masipa. I now recognize Honourable Nkondlo for your second opportunity.
Thank you, Somlom. Jacques Diouf says, hunger is not an issue of charity, it is an issue of justice. As the African National Congress would like to know, what concrete programs is the Western Cape Department of Agriculture currently implementing to address food insecurity, especially in high-risk areas identified in the census and GHS data? What are these programs geographically located? Are they equitably distributed between urban areas like Cape Town and rural towns where farm worker hunger is in the extremes? What are the type of partnerships that the department have with municipalities, with NGOs and community-based organizations to expand sustainable food relief, nutritional support, and urban farming? In the current financial year, what budget allocations have been ring-fenced specifically for food security interventions? Has the department explored the expansion of community food gardens, support for subsistence farming, and improved school nutrition programs in severely affected communities? And how does the department justify the contradiction between the gross value of agricultural production in the province and the persistent inability of farm workers to earn a living wage sufficient to buy the very food they harvest? Honorable Speaker, This contradiction is further compounded by the reality that South Africa wastes 10 million tons of food every year, much of it from the agricultural sector, while millions go hungry. Studies have shown that 45% of this wasted food is fresh produce dumped despite the levels of hunger in our communities. It is a moral outrage that in the province, the agricultural heartland of the country, food is being discarded on such a scale while children in the areas of Laingsburg, in Beaufort West, and Khayelitsha go to bed hungry. What responsibility is the wine industry taking to ensure that its workers who produce billions in exports do not go to bed hungry? And what measures are farmers putting in place to guarantee that food security is addressed within their own workforce, given that many refuse to pay the minimum wage? Unless there is a focused, data-driven, and province-wide response, food insecurity in the province will continue to worsen. Our people do not need glossy strategies or press statements. They need urgent action to ensure that no household in this agricultural province goes to bed hungry. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable Nkondlo, I recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to honourable members that took part in this interpellation. I think it is very important that we agree that the spotlight must be on the inefficiency also in the value chain. There was research done that shows that a certain heavy percentage of food goes to waste in that whole value system. The farmers, the commercial farmers and people in the whole value chain are very much aware of this and doing everything possible to minimize that impact. But Honourable Speaker, nutrition at school is a very important program, particularly for the learners, and the Minister, the Honourable Minister of Education, Mr. David Maynier, he is doing everything possible to make sure that that money is protected in his program for the learners in the school program, and that's why we have one of the best nutritional programs in this country for learners, and I want to thank the Minister of Education for doing that particular job. We're not cutting any stuff there like other departments. But also, I want to indicate to the honourable member, the data is real, and I agree with you. A child that goes hungry should be a matter of great concern. No child can learn on a hungry stomach, and this issue of food security is therefore for this government also a serious issue. We have also a Ministry of Health and Wellness, and nutritional food is important, and I can assure you that the Minister of Health and both Minister of Health and Education are very serious in terms of dealing with this particular matters in their various portfolios. But not only them, also the Minister of Social Development, also the Minister of Sport, because nothing must happen in a sport environment when children are hungry. But the biggest investment happens in education and health when it comes to the food security and nutritional program in particular. Hunger, I think, agree with you, Honourable Member, is a justice issue. Research also shows that the hunger is bigger in the urban areas, and that's why we roll out food gardens in urban areas. We have 26 sub-councils, and I've engaged with the City of Cape Town because I want in every sub-council access to land, access to the councillor, access to food security through our particular program. Honourable Member Nkondlo, the sponsor of this specific interpellation, have asked for some specific numbers, specific projects. We have also smallholder producer support. We planned about 33, we delivered 41 in the previous period. In terms of improved food security, this is the data that I collected now from the APP, annual performance plan. Subsistence producers, we have looked at increasing the food security for them. We had the target of 65, we've delivered 142, since you've asked also for the numbers and the real numbers. In terms of improved food security and safety, we have rolled out community food security projects that we supported. The target was 20, we have delivered 24. You've asked also about other projects. We have school food gardens that we have supported in the previous financial year, not that significant, but there were some numbers. Also, in terms of food security awareness programs, we had a number of households supported with agricultural fruit production at the household level. We targeted 3,000 households, individual level. We have delivered 3,913. But I think, Honourable Member, the chairperson of our standing committee, Noko Masipa, raises a very important issue.
Honourable Minister, I wish to remind you that your time has expired, and I would ask you to please conclude your sentence. Honourable Minister, please conclude. Otherwise, I have to ask you to please take your seat.
I'm ready. You ask, I must give a last sentence.
No, you must conclude your current sentence. So if you don't have a sentence, I'm not allowing you to start a new one.
Okay, but my sentence started with Honourable Member Noko Masipa.
So can you please conclude, Honourable Minister?
Honourable Member Noko asked a very important question about the transfer of the conditional grants, the timeless transfer, and I agree with him. We need a new
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Please take your seat. Order members. Honourable members, on a more serious note, as I indicated previously, I allow you the latitude to conclude your sentence. There's rules that we have all agreed to when at the start of the session. There's also rules that dictates how interpellations are allocated. And it's only fair that everyone gets the same amount of latitude. I want to again caution members that when I call you to order to conclude, to please adhere to that call in order for us to get through the order of the day, or orders of the day. Honourable members, that concludes interpellation number 1. We now move on to interpellation number 2 as printed on the question paper, and I recognise the Honourable Minister of Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Minister Bradell. Minister, do you need the podium?
Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member Stoffels for the interpellation of die maatreëls wat aan die begin van die winter geïmplementeer is, toegesien het dat owerhede voldoende en tydig op stormskade en oorstromings reageer. Die maatreëls wat aan die begin van die winterseisoen geïmplementeer is, het owerhede bemagtig om voldoende en tydig op oorstromingskade of stormskade en oorstromings te reageer, munisipaliteite van die Wes-Kaap in staat gestel om so te doen. Die Departement van Plaaslike Regering deur die Wes-Kaapse Provinciale Rampbestuursentrum het seker gemaak dat alle munisipaliteite reeds teen Februarie 2025 winterparaatheidsplanne ingedien het. Hierdie planne gekombineer met die departement se paraatheidsrespons en herstel het die grondslag gelê vir 'n gekoördineerde en vinnige reaksie op noodgevalle sou dit nodig word. Alhoewel die Wes-Kaap hierdie winteroorstromings ervaar het, was dit nie op dieselfde vlak as die grootskaalse vloede van 2023-2024 nie. Die voorvalle wat plaasgevind het hoofsaaklik informele nedersettings geaffekteer en het gelokaliseerde kitsvloede ingesluit wat paaie en residensiële areas geaffekteer het. Munisipaliteite was in staat om deur hul bestaande strukture en reaksie organismes hierdie impakte doeltreffend te bestuur. Vroeë weer waarskuwingsstelsels van die Suid-Afrikaanse weerdienste ondersteun deur impakgebaseerde waarskuwingsstelsels en doeltreffende strategieë vir openbare kommunikasie het munisipaliteite en gemeenskappe met voorbereiding gehelp. Hierdie waarskuwings is met die munisipaliteite en die departemente gedeel. Afhangend van die erns van die waarskuwings is die sosiale platforms gebruik om paraatheidsboodskappe aan gemeenskappe te kommunikeer. Munisipaliteite het ook voordeel getrek uit opleiding in veerkragtigheid, vloed, bewusmakingsveldtogte en die bedryfsvennootskappe met die nie-regeringsorganisasies en die reddingsorganisasies soos SARSA, dis die 4x4 mense, en die NSRI, wat verseker het dat noodreaksie beide vinnig en goed gekoördineerd was. Die Wes-Kaap Rampbestuursentrum het ook bewusmakingsveldtogte reg oor die Oeverberg, die Tuinroete, die Weskus en die Kaapse Wynland distrik uitgevoer en op die volgende sleutelareas gefokus. Bewusmaking van brandrisiko, waarmee ons tans weer besig is vir die brandseisoen wat voor te berei, voorbereiding op oorstromingsgevare, die huishoudelike veiligheidspraktyke en die bevordering van noodsaaklike noodkontaknommers. Daarbey het die finansiële en die menslike hulpbronne ondersteuning plaaslike kapasiteit versterk deur die aanstelling van rampbestuur interns en befondsingstoewysings vir vloedreaksies. Die Wes-Kaapse Rampbestuursentrum het die aanstellings van 10 rampbestuur interns in die Tuinroete, Weskus, Oeverberg en Sentraal Karoo en die Kaapse Wynland distrik befonds. Die Tuinroete distrikmunisipaliteit het 'n toewysing vir brandkapasiteit van 2,5 miljoen van die Departement van Plaaslike Regering ontvang. Hierdie fondse is strategies in die verkryging van toerusting vir
Honourable Minister, please conclude your sentence.
en vinnige waterreddingsbelê.
Thank you very much. Baie dankie, agbare minister. I now recognize the Honourable Stoffel. Do you need the podium?
Yes, Speaker.
I will make sure that Thank you very much, Honourable Stoffel. You may continue.
Honorable Speaker, every winter our people in Khayelitsha, Mitchells Plain and Philippi George, Saldanha and rural Karoo towns cry the same painful tears. Homes flood, children sleep in cold community halls and families lost the little they worked so hard for. Each year in this house, the same question is asked to understand what is the provincial government doing to protect the poor and vulnerable. And each year, Honorable Speaker, we receive the same copy and paste answer from the DA-led government. Nothing changed except the suffering of our people worsened. The so-called winter readiness plan lives only on paper. It treats the life of African and colored people as if they do not matter. This government even tells residents of informal settlements to dig trenches around their sects. Imagine that, Honorable Speaker, a government that tells poor people to pick up spades instead of providing real solutions. This is not readiness, it is neglect. It is not governance, it is abandonment. It is the same arrogance we saw under apartheid when Black lives were cheap, when we witnessed in the Western Cape. It is nothing less than apartheid. The reincarnation of heartless governance we thought we buried in 1994. Flooding does not discriminate. It affects informal settlements, townships, farms, and informal homes because drainage systems across municipalities are broken, neglected, or non-existent. Instead of fixing problems, this government ran an awareness campaign. They hand out pamphlets to people losing their homes. But awareness does not stop water from flooding a house. It does not dry the tears of a mother whose children are sleeping on wet floors. Our people need working stormwater systems, proper drainage, safe housing, and emergency shelters when disasters strike. The truth, Honorable Speaker, is that this government is playing with lives. Look at Mthatha, where more than 100 people recently died in devastating floods. Last year in Riversland, a dam collapsed. We are just vulnerable as any other province. The difference is that when the disasters strike here, the government will have no excuse because they were warned year after year and choose not to act. The DA-led government is not just failing, it is complicit in suffering. destruction, and loss of life. Man up, please. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, honourable member. I now recognize Honourable Bryant. Honourable members, I'm not going to continuously ask if you need the podium. I have made a ruling and a point about it. If you do, please indicate to the service officers in the chamber. They will assist you. Honourable Bryant, you may continue.
Speaker, in 2020, the City of Cape Town provided over 10,000 emergency housing kits, more than any other municipality in South Africa.
Yeah.
When disaster struck, this DA-led city acted quickly, effectively, and with accountability. Unfortunately, the national government has since centralized the emergency housing grant. Instead of empowering municipalities that deliver, they have created more bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for the people, Speaker? Well, it means slower response times. It means layers of red tape and families left waiting for relief while Pretoria shuffles their paperwork. Speaker, when a fire or a flood rips through an informal settlement, communities do not have the luxury of waiting for a central department to decide how and when to act. They need immediate relief. And that relief was best provided by local governments, like the City of Cape Town. So we have to ask, why the rush to strip capacity from the one municipality that's delivered more, faster, and with better results than anyone else? Residents should not suffer because elements in national government prefer central control over faster delivery. This mandate belongs in the hands of municipalities, closest to the people, and not in the corridors of Pretoria. So perhaps the minister can explain to us why the emergency housing grant was centralized by national government, particularly when municipalities like the City of Cape Town have already proven their ability to deliver more effectively than national government can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bryant. I recognize the order members. I recognize the Honourable Stoffel.
Honourable Speaker, I do not raise this issue for political point scoring. I raise them because I have witnessed that. Where were you? With my own eyes, the profound suffering enduring by the people of the Cape Flats, our township and rural areas every winter. I have spoken to mothers gripped by the terror of the knowing where the children will sleep. I have seen elderly citizens shivering under soaked blankets and homeless individuals suffering icing nights with nothing but cardboard for shelter. These are human beings deserving a government that values their life and inherent dignity. Awareness is not enough. We demand concrete action. Municipalities must cease instructing residents to dig trenches and instead building powerful stormwater systems, even with informal settlement. We require safe, warm, and well-resourced emergency shelters in every municipality MEC so that no family is abandoned to a storm. Crucially, the province must end the chronic and unspending on housing budget. Flooding is a perpetual crisis because people remain in floodplains. The right to house is a constitutional right, not a luxury. And this government continues to fail to deliver. Furthermore, our disaster management plan bluntly ignores the homeless who are left to survive on pavements with only plastic for protection. They are treated as invisible. And this is unacceptable. These plans must explicitly recognize and protect our most vulnerable citizens. Finally, we must address accountability. Disaster management funds cannot become a DA cash cow, looted under the guise of emergency. The MEC possesses the power of intervene and prevent disaster. Those powers must be used to save lives, build safe communities, MEC, and deliver justice for the poor. Disaster is not merely about weather. It is the direct consequences of political choices that perpetuate inequality. It is a glaring indicator of who this government prioritizes and who is systematically abandons to the cold. The evidence is neglected and is written in the mud and the tears of our communities. I therefore want to ask the MEC, do you really care for our people? Or like your DA forebears, do you hate maybe poor people, particularly Black people? If you love them,
Honorable member, please conclude your sentence. Your time has expired.
What is the right end need to do? Please, MEC, do something.
Thank you very much. I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Yeah. Honourable Speaker, thank you very much. What a disappointment, because this is really a very serious conversation, and it's a conversation where one would love to learn also from the opposition and the standing committee, because we don't have all the answers. But what a pathetic interpellation from the ANC side. Really a disappointment. But if they want, Honourable Speaker, one thing that I cannot understand, if I was a member of the ANC, I will be so quiet, because they've bankrupted this country. They steal everything. They've got no successes to brag. And then they come here and they grandstand. And the honourable member made the mistake of bringing in other provinces. And it's sad if the honourable member admitted of the amount of people who died in KZN. And I'm not going to blame anything, because it can happen. Nobody can prepare and to protect the people 100%. But in KZN, we lost hundreds of lives.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Order.
ANC.
Order. Order. Honourable members, I've asked 3 or 4 times for order in the House. I've allowed political interjections because I'm not going to stifle political debate. But it is now the minister's opportunity to respond to an interpellation that a member used the parliamentary and standing rules to place on the question paper. It's only fair that those that participated in this debate have an opportunity to hear the response. Honourable members, please do not drown out the speaker. If you do not agree with the response that you're getting, there's avenues in the standing rules that provides opportunities for you to raise it again. But it is now the opportunity of the minister to respond to those members who participated in this interpellation. Honourable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, in the Eastern Cape, more than 100 people died. It's very sad, very tragic. But this province phoned and told them we've got over 40 people with 4x4s that's willing to assist them. They didn't care. They're ANC controlled. We've lost over 100, I think over 300 lives in the Eastern Cape. This province last week signed the MOU with KZN. They don't have a disaster center in place to support them, to help them, irrespective of political alliance, irrespective of where they're coming from. We want to save South Africans' lives, and we've got the expertise to fast track and to support them, and we will keep on doing that. Honourable Speaker, the centralization, Honourable Brand, the chairperson of the Standing Committee, it's a very simple answer for me. Is you centralize to steal more. It's as simple as that, irrespective of the poorest of the poor that will suffer. Because if your informal settlement burns tonight, you need another house, you need shelter tomorrow, not wait for the ANC for 3-4 months. And that's what they offer to the people. There's nobody else that care more for the poor than this Western Cape government. We fight for the poor. We bring the agendas to support the poor. And just as they laugh now, just last week I visited the township. The solution is easy: to provide water, sanitation, electricity to a township. but they refuse with their political agendas. They work behind the screens to stop us, to block us. And I'm going to meet Monday with one of the national ministers to ask him, the Minister of Rural Development, just give us permission and we will put the electricity in for the people. And by the way, it's for black people. We've delivered toilets last week to those communities that don't have it because the ANC don't care. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Order. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. On order, members. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of interpellation number 2 on the question paper. We will now move on to questions for oral reply in terms of Rule 202. But before I recognize the first or recognize the Minister for the first question, I wish to remind the honourable members that there's an opportunity for 4 follow-ups after the Minister has delivered, or I think it's only the Ministers on the order paper today. The Minister has started responding. There's 4 opportunities, as has been custom to date. The first follow-up will be allocated to the person posing the initial question to the Minister, and thereafter 3 additional questions. For those members who's online, please use the hand raise functionality, and for those members in the chamber, please give an indication to the table staff to recognize you. As soon as the Minister starts delivering the answer to the initial question, Honourable Syed, you can then give me an indication you have a follow-up. I recognize the Honourable Minister, Minister Meinier.
Thank you, Speaker. I must say that before I begin, it's been very hard this week to ignore the Honourable Brett Herron's recent statements on an incident which took place in Philippi, and which I'm sure most honourable members in this House are aware of. He seems to have positioned himself, a speaker, almost uniquely on the crime issue as a member fighting those who fight crime here in the Western Cape. Speaker, that of course being said, I would like to thank the honourable member for the question, which of course traverses the very important question of gang-related violence and schools in our province. Now, I'm sure that honourable members would agree with me that gang violence is, of course, primarily a law enforcement matter, as the ability to police crime lies with the South African Police Service and law enforcement. So I would not want to speak on behalf of the police, but I can certainly speak to some of the matters raised in the quote in the Weekend Argus to which the honourable member refers. I would like to speak more, of course, of the quote than just the small excerpt noticed by the member, because, of course, the honourable member has to some extent selectively quoted. The SAPS member is also quoted in the same newspaper as saying the following: I don't believe that we alone, as the anti-gang unit, will ever bring down gang violence. We can make certain efforts to reduce gang violence, but with a multidisciplinary approach, that is where I believe that we can make a lot more impact. And I think this is too important a point to simply skip over. Yes, policing gang violence lies with law enforcement. But we all, and I'm sure that honourable members would agree with this, we all have a role to play. This includes government departments, community organizations, school communities, and of course the general public and members of this House. Only a whole of society approach can have any hope of reducing gang violence. Turning now to the small excerpt the member has highlighted, namely where the SAPS member in question is quoted as saying the following. So, for example, we meet the education department on a monthly basis, and there's a lot that we've already put in place, but it can only get better. That is the excerpt to which the honourable member refers and where he focuses his question. Again, I would not presume to speak on behalf of the police, but I can infer that the monthly meetings he is referring to are the recurring monthly Prof Joints Priority Committee Anti-Gang Implementation Plan, or AGIP meetings, which are in fact led by the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety. These meetings have been held monthly, and these are not new, monthly since 2017. And I think are a good example of what we mean when we speak about a whole of society approach to preventing gang violence in our province. Now, these monthly AGIP meetings are multidisciplinary engagements involving not just the anti-gang unit. They involve, as I've said, the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety, the Western Cape Education Department, which I, of course, have mentioned, but also the Provincial Departments of Social Development, Cultural Affairs and Sport, Agriculture, Economic Development and Tourism, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, and of course the Provincial Treasury, SAPS, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the National Departments of Justice and Constitutional Development, National Department of Correctional Service, and the City of Cape Town. These departments and agencies all work together under the National Anti-Gangsterism Strategy and the Provincial Anti-Gang Intervention Plan. And I believe this is what the member is referring to. Now, in terms of the question, what has been put in place as part of these collaborative meetings? First, we have a safety and security resilience scorecard that has been developed jointly by the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety and also the Western Cape Education Department in consultation with the SAPS to assess risk levels and inform targeted deployments of safety resources at schools. The tool also provides valuable management information on the enhancement of safety policies required to improve safety at each school. We have also implemented targeted interventions to improve learner attendance at school to reduce the number of learners out of school and at risk of gang involvement. The aim is to reduce absenteeism and truancy, but also to reintegrate truant learners by conducting home visits and advocating the benefits of attending school, staying at school, and being at school, of course, consistently all the way to matric. We work together, of course, on the development of safety plans and functional safety committees at individual schools, as well as targeted funding for security infrastructure at high-risk schools. We collaborate on after-school and holiday programs, as well as behavioral and training interventions at schools. And these are, of course, incredibly valuable, not only in terms of keeping children occupied and off the streets, but also in cementing positive behavior and learner aspirations for their future. Interventions we have implemented cooperatively with the SAPs and other departments include programs to address gang and drug issues at school, of course, training of teachers on random drug testing and related programs, training of teachers on search and seizure operations, leadership training, training in creative and constructive approaches to conflict resolution, peer mediation, anti-bullying initiatives, cadets and marching initiatives, which reinforce positive behavior and discipline, active involvement in diversion programs involving, most importantly, sport, arts and culture, values initiatives, life skills for learners at risk of problem behavior to prevent possible problems in advance, and interventions to reduce physical and emotional abuse. So, honourable members, there is a lot being done by the various departments in our province, working together with national government to combat gang violence and to combat gang violence in schools. But these are not the only measures we have in place to address safety issues in our schools that are related to gang violence. SAPS and law enforcement assist us with search and seizure operations to directly tackle gang-related activities in terms of weapons and drugs in schools. Getting those weapons and drugs out of our schools is something that we really value and appreciate their support. We have, I think, as most members know, we have school resource officers from the City of Cape Town's law enforcement operating at our schools in high-risk areas to tackle crime and safety matters in the school environment. So the city is part of the monthly meetings, and we contribute, of course, to the funding of these officers. And I know that the honourable member has a particular interest in this matter. And these school resource officers, honourable member, are making a real difference. In the first 6 months of this year, just the first 6 months of this year, they have already undertaken 8,508 searches, performed 6,480 confiscations, and made 10 arrests, which I think is an extraordinary result and has contributed to the safety in our schools. So a big thank you to the City of Cape Town's SROs and to our Safe Schools teams for their efforts. But that is not all. Speaker or Deputy Speaker, I beg your pardon. We also have a Safe Schools call center with learners, teachers, and parents which can be accessed toll-free, where they can receive advice on how to tackle issues like gang involvement, problem behavior, substance use, and the like. This again goes to the issue of trying to nip at-risk and problem behavior in the bud, rather than trying to pull kids out of gangs later. So I would certainly appeal to anyone who is concerned about a particular learner to contact the call center on 0800 454647 to seek advice. This is a toll-free service and well connected in terms of referrals, particularly to other services if required. We maintain open communication channels with the SAPs, which allow us to respond when incidents of gang violence occur. We have standard protocols in place at our schools to deal with such incidents, whether at school or in the surrounding community. Very importantly, we have district support teams who, along with our Western Cape government partners, can provide psychosocial support to our schools when an incident has occurred. And I want to commend our teams for the way in which they support our learners, our staff, and our school communities who have experienced violent incidents at the hands of gangs. In general, Deputy Speaker, it is always preferable to keep a school open, and that is our default position as a department. We aim to keep a school open when an incident has occurred in a community, to keep learners off the streets and in a safe place. Where we need to close a school early, it must be done in an orderly manner, in coordination with the district. So the information we receive from the SAPs, of course, is essential in making these decisions. Deputy Speaker, on this note, I want to highlight what I think is a very important matter relating to gang violence that is causing me great concern at present. In the past few weeks, we have seen a tremendous amount of fake news about gang-related violence and the impact this has had on our schools circulating on social media. An article also appeared in the Cape Argus claiming that a specific school had been closed because of gang violence without even verifying this information. And the claim was completely false. And I regret to say some of that fake news has surfaced and has been aired in this House. This is a danger. There is a danger of relying on social media. Anyone can post anything, and it is instantly shared without any verification whatsoever. And the problem, Deputy Speaker, is that it causes panic, it causes fear, it causes confusion, and it causes the disruption to our schools when parents rush to collect their learners from school early. And ultimately, Deputy Speaker, it potentially compromises the safety, not just of learners, but also of parents. And so I'm very concerned about fake news in the space. And I would urge honorable members to verify the information which they are furnished with. Which in the end also it means that I'm pleased that part of our safety initiatives in our department has been implementing an online safety curriculum. The lessons don't just include how learners can keep themselves safe online, but also how to be responsible citizens on the internet. This means evaluating and scrutinizing the information you receive online and then treating that information responsibly. Our hope is that this will help our learners to grow up, to become responsible adults, and to be able to distinguish between the sharing of information that is beneficial and the sharing of information which is potentially harmful. I'd really also like to appeal to our learners, to our teachers, to the public, and also to members of our House who set the example to be very, very cautious about information you share when it has not been verified or does not come from an official source, precisely because there is always the risk of causing panic, of causing fear, of causing confusion, of causing disruption to schooling, and ultimately of compromising the safety of our learners. When you spread fake news, you give gangs power and you allow them to mobilize fear as a weapon. So please remember, just because it is on social media does not make it true. Don't make the jobs of law enforcement and the SAPs harder than they already are. And don't give gangs the upper hand by spreading fake news. Deputy Speaker, I hope that honourable members share my view that the department, working together with other departments in the Western Cape government and indeed in national government, are doing a lot to combat gang-related violence and gang-related violence in schools here in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. In the absence of the member that posed the question, the first opportunity will go to Member Syed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I must say that given the current context of gang violence, especially gang violence that is now affecting our learners, one does feel the void of you not occupying a seat in the executive. I must say that. The major error of judgment on the part of the Premier. But let me thank Honourable Mania for the response, but also for cautioning us all about fake news. I want to thank him for that. I think we must be very responsible in this particular house. And on that note, I want to say that as the opposition is, and especially as the official opposition, and I can speak for colleagues here, we don't come here with fake news. We bring real news. The Noah's High School stabbing was a real issue that we brought last week to the Premier, and the Premier was unable to respond as to what mechanisms are in place to prevent these incidents from happening at our schools. And while the MEC has gone with a long narrative, we have not really seen what has been can the MEC tell us what has been the concrete impact of these joint meetings, of these mechanisms that have been put in place? What has been the concrete impact? Can you give examples of concrete improvements in terms of being able to curb gang violence and violence generally at our schools? Because we are concerned, and maybe you must tell us, in all of this, we have not seen civil society being part and parcel of the solution. Civil society are not invited to be part and parcel of the solution. And I want to commend the fact that there are joint initiatives with different spheres of government, but we need to build on that. Perhaps that shows why devolution is not necessary, because here the MEC is involved in cooperative governance. It just needs to be effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Syed. Minister, there was, during that particular input, there was one specific question. I trust that you caught it. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I couldn't help noticing that the Leader of the Opposition was on rapid fire mode this afternoon and posed a number of questions amidst comments. But let me start by thanking him for his commitment and the commitment of his party to being careful of becoming vulnerable to circulating fake news, especially in relation to gang violence at our schools, because of, as I've said, the very real danger of causing panic and disruption and compromising the safety of our learners. Deputy Speaker, we do in fact collect statistics in terms of gang violence on our school premises through, of course, our Safe Schools program. And certainly in terms of the first 6 months of this year, we are currently on track to have fewer gang-related incidents reported compared to last year. And I think that is evidence that the measures that we are putting in place does have at least some impact. Of course, the broader impact which the anti-gang strategy and the collaboration between the various departments is having, I think was captured in a statement released yesterday by the Premier, where we were informed that there have been, for example, 679 arrests for murder, 684 arrests for attempted murder, 578 arrests for illegal possession of firearms, and 29,804 arrests for drug-related offences. Possibly more importantly, Deputy Speaker, 842 illegal firearms have been seized. And probably most importantly, during the period under review, 40 convictions for gang-related activity. So I think that there is a demonstrable impact, not just in the school environment, but indeed in society here in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. On the online platform, I note the Honourable Christians.
No, thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for all those answers. But Deputy Speaker, I just want to find out from the Minister, and of course, I didn't read the entire article, I only read the piece put by the Honourable Member. Is there, still at our schools, there is gangs recruiting our learners, and they go to the school with a mandate. Is there cooperation between the school resource officers and the anti-gang unit to identify these problems? Because I can tell you, with everything the Minister said, learners in certain communities is not safe. They go to they can't even go from the one quad to the other quad because gangs are operating different quads in different areas in the schools and different quads in the schools. So, Minister, proactive, what proactive measures can be taken for our learners to be safe when they're in school? I'm not talking about outside, I'm talking about inside the school premises. What proactive measures can be taken? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Deputy Speaker, I do want to assure the honourable member that the school resource officers do collaborate with the SAPs in combating gang violence in our schools, and they certainly collaborate with the SAPs in their operations. And the operations in the past 6 months, as I said in my initial reply, are on what I regard as a fairly wide scale. I remind the member, 8,508 searches, 6,480 confiscations, and of course, 10 arrests, all done in collaboration with the South African Police Service. I think the most important thing, and the honourable member has raised this in the past, is that we need in our strategies to be proactive, to identify at-risk learners early. And it's precisely for that reason that I outlined the kinds of programs that we have in place to reduce absenteeism and truancy and reintegrate our learners through home visits back into schools to ensure that those learners are not vulnerable to becoming involved in gang violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I note the Honourable Johnson.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Through you to the Minister. Minister, I would just like to know how many school resource officers are currently operating in schools within the Western Cape, and how do they support school safety? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for that question, focusing on our school resource officers, which of course is a key program in our efforts to reduce gang violence in our schools. Honourable members may not be aware, but we have 82 school resource officers operating in our schools. That's up from 64 school resource officers operating in our schools last year. And we are spending about 35 million rand a year supporting these school resource officers. Now, our school resource officers are deployed in 2 ways. First, some school resource officers are part of what's called area-based teams. And for honorable members who may not be familiar with this environment, area-based teams are safety groups comprising of government, but also non-government government stakeholders that focus really in a defined geographic area and work together to combat crime and violence in hotspots. So some school resource officers are deployed as part of the ABT teams, but other school resource officers, of course, are deployed to what we call schools at risk. And these are schools where learners and teachers are negatively impacted by violence, by bullying, by harassment, by the influence of substance abuse, and of course, gang violence. Now, our school resource officers have several functions, and as I've said in my previous reply, work very closely with SAPS and law enforcement. They, of course, collaborate with school leadership to identify and address issues that could lead to crime or disorder. They detect illegal activity early in order to sort of prevent crime. They develop and run, importantly, crime prevention programs inside our schools, including also after-school programs and holiday programs. They, of course, conduct security patrols in and around our schools, and they report any incidents to our Safe Schools call center. They build partnerships, and this is important. They build partnerships not just with school staff and parents, but also with the school community. They obviously serve on the safety committees and assist with emergency planning. They maintain a visible presence at the school. They network with the local communities. They support learners through collaboration with support teams and referrals. And of course, they promote law enforcement positively and provide educational sessions on related topics. And of course, most importantly, as I've said, they do assist in investigations of criminal incidents at our schools in coordination, importantly, with the SAPS. And I believe that they are making a difference and they are contributing to the safety of our learners, particularly at-risk schools in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And the final question to the Honourable Marie.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Thank you to the Minister. Minister, I've listened to what you have said, and I'm just concerned that perhaps if you could indicate to the House that you've mentioned a lot about security, but the feeling of safety is something perhaps our schools are unable to offer because of the environment they find themselves in, the under-resourced communities they find themselves in. And keeping in mind that Crystal House is a non-profit organization offering a value proposition that public schools at the moment can only strive for, how do you find the balance between giving safety to our children and creating that safe environment so that they can actually learn as a child should learn without fear?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. I think that all our schools do the best they can to create a safe environment for our learners. working obviously in collaboration with our department, with other departments, with law enforcement, and with SAPS. Of course, it is very difficult for public ordinary schools to match the kind of standard that is put on by Crystal House, but we certainly aspire to do so. The Honourable Member will, I'm sure, be delighted to hear that we are, of course, collaborating with Crystal House, not only to expand the existing school, but also working together with other departments in the provincial government. We're working to enable Crystal House to build a second school here in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Before we proceed, and I'm not wanting to take additional time, Honourable Members, I didn't want to curb the context that was provided by members in posing the question, but I would want to again remind the member to ask the relevant question directly, and also for relevant ministers to speak to the chair. I trust that that is in order. I now recognize the Honourable Minister, Dr. Meyer.
Deputy Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. And thank you to the Honourable Member, the Chairperson of my Standing Committee, Mr. Noko Masipa, for his question. Ja, die departement het beide kwartaal 1 en kwartaal 2 oordragbetalings gedurende vroeg Augustus, met ander woorde vroeg in hierdie maand, het ons oordragbetalings ontvang en die departement is tans besig met die oordragbetalingsooreenkomste, die sogenaamde TPA Transfer Payment Agreement, aan ons projekbestuursvennote, maar as gevolg van die vertragings sal die nuwe aanplantings van vrugte, wyn en tafeldrywe tot die volgende seisoen uitgestel moet word en die totale aantal hektaar wat geraak word, veral vir hierdie 3 kommoditeite, is so ongeveer 29,65 hektaar. Baie dankie, agbare Jink Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognize the member that posed the question, Honourable Masipa.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the questions. The answer to the questions. Really, Honourable Speaker, what really my question really is just to understand the impact or the amount of farmers that are being supported through the CAS funding in the Western Cape and the impact that this funding is making. Thank you.
Agbare Speaker, ek wil net gou kyk hier na die data van die vorige termyn, want hierdie spesifieke oordragbetalings, die sogenaamde CAS funding, die conditional grants, het werklik 'n bepalende effek of impak rondom die programme vir byvoorbeeld die vrugte en dit het ernstige implikasies, want ons volg hier 'n kommoditeitsbenadering in hierdie departement en hierdie kommoditeitsbenadering gaan juist daaroor dat ons die kleinboere, opkomende boere wil meer na kommersiële boere toe neem, maar wanneer daar vertragings is, affekteer dit uit die aard van die saak hierdie spesifieke ontwikkelingsgeleenthede. Die vraag ten opsigte van die getalle, ek verwys hier spesifiek nou na nie hierdie tydperk nie, maar goed wat voor hierdie huis gedien het, naamlik die annual performance plan, want daar was in die verlede omtrent so 55 projekte wat ons ondersteun het, 7 was vir wynprojekte, 19 was vir vrugteprojekte, insluitende die byeprojekte, 2 vir graan, 9 vir groente, 2 vir wheat en ook onder andere piggery en poultry. So hier is werklik mense wat direk geaffekteer word vir spesifiek hierdie opkomende boere. So hierdie vertragings vertraag ook die transformasie. En daarom is my departement voortdurend in gesprek met die nasionale departement, want ek dink dit kan nie meer langer so aangaan nie.
Honorable members, I see no further hands on the online platform, neither in the House. We proceed to question number 3, and I again recognize the Honorable Dr. Meyer.
Die hele kwessie van hoe affekteer hierdie 30% tariewe die uitvoere na die Verenigde State en wat is die beplanning vir die Wes-Kaapse regering? The Honourable Member Masipa, the department supports the response measures by the Department of Trade and Industry. The Western Cape government, along with other stakeholders, continues to supply data and analytical support to other stakeholders to strengthen our South Africa's position on the trade negotiations. Diversification of the markets are very important to mitigate the risk associated with this high tariffs in the US market is also among some of the strategies, but this will also be accelerated by the promotion of the work that's currently being done by Westgrow. Honorable members, as we sit here in this house today, I have a delegation that have met with the Singaporean enterprises. In fact, yesterday, another delegation was in Malaysia to do some economic diplomacy work in this particular regard. So I'm particularly happy that the work is continuing in this particular regard. Also, furthermore, we are engaging in soft diplomacy with various countries and partners to identify and unlocking opportunities. The Western Cape has done a study also to develop a diversification strategy for exports as a counter to the 30% tariffs imposed by the United States. This resulting strategy will be released shortly. So daar is 'n studie wat ons tans onderneem om die implikasies van hierdie 30% tariewe te ondersoek en te bespreek. Intussen het my departement ook bietjie gekyk na 'n nuwe uitvoerstrategie. Daardie strategie is tans dis 'n bietjie inhuis geworkshop. Ek beoog om dit na die volgende Growth for Jobs kabinetskomitee toe te neem. Nadat daardie kabinetskomitee dit goedkeur, sal ek dit voorlê aan die kabinet van die Wes-Kaapse regering. Daarna sal ek dit weer bespreek met die besigheidssektor, die uitvoersektor, die Western Cape Export Forum. En hulle was ook gekonsulteer ten opsigte van hierdie strategie. En dit is vir ons baie belangrik dat ons vra, maar wat is die Wes-Kaap se benadering tot die 30% tariewe? En wat is die benadering? En 2, wat is die strategie? Ek het so 'n dokument opgestel intussen wat kyk na wat is jou strategie, want in hierdie verband is daar ook baie geraas. En ons moet hierdie geraas minimaliseer. En daarom is dit vir my belangrik dat jy die korrekte benadering volg. En die vraag is, wat is die korrekte benadering? Die korrekte benadering is, kry jou data, kry jou feite, kry jou evidence. Tweedens, don't panic. Leaders don't panic. Thirdly, engage in an open dialogue. The Premier and myself invited the people that do business with the US to Lebanon. We had an open discussion because the policy of this government is first to listen. We listen to these people that do business with the United States. And there are 600 companies in South Africa that currently do business with the United States. The Premier and I had discussions with him at Lebanon to see what is the business environment, what they are currently doing, how they engage with the situation, and how this will impact their business situation. We had a follow-up discussion in the presence of the US Consul General, because we also asked them, firstly, South African farmers that do business with the United States, how do they feel? To listen. Then we had the second discussion with US businesses to see how do they advise us as a government how we need to deal with this, because they are also in South Africa, they're in the Western Cape, and they are also importers of our products on the side of the border. So first, get the data, get the science. We know from the data that it's only about 4% of our agricultural products that go to the United States, significant though. Also, we understand that after your dialogue, it's also important to engage, honorable member, with the National Government of Unity, the one that you love so much, the GNU. Yes, through the chair, the government that you love so much, we engage with the Government of National Unity. I have personally had some discussions with the Minister Park Staal at the G20 working group on trade and investment that was held at Somerset. And since you love him so much, I will further continue to engage with that because that is our relationship. You have indicated earlier, like you, Honorable Member Masipa loves the GNU. And so we also engage with the B20 and the G20. And we also decided that we must have a proactive, forward-looking approach. So that is the approach. Now the question is, what is the strategy of this part of the House? Well, we have decided as this side of the House that we must have a clear strategy. And the strategy is listen to the business community and consult the sectors. And that's why BFAP has been commissioned to do some research for us. We are going to have a meeting with the business community. As I indicated earlier, we are busy developing an export strategy. In fact, the work has been completed, but it needs to follow the various cabinet processes. And Honorable Member, Deputy Speaker, through to Honorable Member opposite me, the strategy is to say grow. Grow means gain new markets. R, retain your current markets. O, optimize the business processes, starting with the harbor. If I want to increase my exports by 5%, Honorable Deputy Speaker, 5% increase through the harbor's exports, this province generate 22,900 new jobs. And so I'm thankful that you support our approach to privatize the harbor and get efficiency, because that's part of the optimization of that process. So that is where we are, but very important to members of this House. Very Honorable Deputy Speaker, I went to the biggest company here in Cape Town that are boat building companies. They build catamarans and they export it. And to members of this House, I know David Mayne would love to know the data. And the data is as follows. This company here in Woodstock, last year, 2024, they exported 212 boats and catamarans, and ek weet nie wat nog nie. 212. 6.9 billion rand in value. Uit Woodstock, right from here. But I think the honorable members on that side of the House love data. They love analytics. And they will love to know how many of that 212 were exported to the United States. They told me of the 212 that they exported last year, 124 were exported to the United States. Oh. Yes. And so that is a real risk. And I was accompanied by the then Deputy Minister, Andrew Whitfield, and we asked some questions. When we left, we said, this company is a 6.9 billion rand export business. What is your advice to politicians on that side of the House and on this side of the House? Their advice is, and in fact, I incorporated it in our strategy. They said, keep the political temperature low. Other words, don't make statements like some political parties, I won't mention them. So don't make such statements because you create further unemployment, because a reduction by 5% in exports will lead to job losses of 22,900. So keep the political temperature low because you know that your temperature, if it increases, in Washington, it has an effect that it can lose great jobs. So political temperature must be kept low. Lastly, I think it's also important to increase our economic diplomacy, which we've been doing all the time. And this for us is very important. But the question is also, in the meantime, the national minister whom I've met, and together with the the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they have also put a package together, because that's the question, what is happening? We work with the national government, because this is a concurrent function. And so we appreciate the 5 key elements of this strategy, namely to secure a deal and reduce the tariffs, also to look at alternative markets, very important, because we are, in fact, today we are 58% of South Africa's primary agricultural products come from the Western Cape. I think the honorable member, through you, Deputy Speaker, will appreciate that last year in 2024, South Africa, we speak about data and analytics. So let's go there. Governance. This is good governance. And so we have decided to look at what the data says. And honorable member Mkonto, I know you love data. Last year, South Africa's agricultural exports through you, Deputy Speaker, it was, this is very important stuff. The last year, South Africa's agricultural exports, not only Western Cape, South Africa, 13.7 billion rand for agriculture. I think it is significant. It is the highest ever in the history of South Africa that we have had that agricultural exports. And so, Honorable Deputy Speaker, it's not so easy to just simply say, let's get additional markets. But this government is committed. I'm in conversations with the Premier, also to look at further strategies in terms of engagements through economic diplomacy. But I know that these members of this House like data and analytics. And here is the analytics that honorable member here will appreciate. 96% of all the products that South Africa exports all over the world, 96% are free from tariffs. So that's why on the 9th of May, I went to Pretoria to attend the EU National Day with Dr. Sandra Kramer to meet, not yet, later. So it is important that we engage with the European Union because 96% of the products are free from tariffs. And so we need to understand the geopolitics. We need to understand our biggest trading markets. We need to understand that the situation in the United States, very complex, but we also need to know that the biggest investments into South Africa come from the European Union. And the 26 member states, we are engaging them on a regular basis. And so, honorable members, this to drive the economic growth through exports, but also through investments. And that's why I went to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange 2 weeks ago to table at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange the Western Cape Investment Summit. Our targets are clear. I want 1 billion rand investments to track it, but I want 70 billion by 2030, and I want 200 billion investments by the year 2035. We are serious. This is a government that believes in growth for jobs. That's our apex priority. Speaking about our apex priority, the apex priority say get investment, foreign direct investment, very important, very significant, hence our investment summit that will take place on the 5th and the 6th of November. Following from that, we believe in growing our export potential. I have recently met with the Minister of Finance of Canada, and his surname will appeal to you, Deputy Speaker. His surname is Mr. Champagne, which means we can already celebrate our export to the Canada. He said to me, Minister, Canada is now open for business because I saw how the people take the wine off the shelves in Canada that comes from the United States. Those shelves are empty. And the Premier said, Minister, let's fill the shelves with wine from the Western Cape. And so when I spoke to the Minister of Finance, he said, we are open for business. And so I'm so happy when we met him with the G20 Ministers of Finance meeting. He's quite a likable guy. And I think when we speak about Northern America, that's part of it. So the wine region in America is from California. It's called the Napa Valley. The Napa Valley makes the best wine. You can ask Honorable Member Dave Bryant. He knows it tastes so nice. So that wine is now no longer available in Canada. And so I had a meeting with Mr. Rico Basson from the wine industry here. How do we get that wine into the markets? And there will be a delegation to visit that particular area. So this is the reality that we face. Tariffs are very fluid. The situation is when you do business, you want predictability in the system. The current approach of the White House is unpredictability. The White House is transactional. They only believe talking to business people. And so far, this is a real issue. But we believe that our strength as South Africa lies not in panicking, but in consolidating the situation. And unlike the opposition on that side of the house, where there's little brain power, little intellect, the data, the science, and the research is guiding this side of the house. That's why we speak about evidence-based, data-led governance. This is a matter that is so important because
Honourable
it
Minister,
affects jobs.
please take your seat. I see the Honourable Stoffel.
Met alle respect, Speaker, can you withdraw that statement? With little brains, dis totaal en al onaanvaardbaar. Asseblief.
Honourable Minister, in terms of that particular comment made, in terms of
Is there,
I'm
if there's a
referring to the
comment-
intelligence of members in this house, I think it's that one. I wouldn't want to repeat or get it wrong, but are you willing to withdraw that statement?
I'm willing to withdraw it if I refer to any specific member. I did not.
Can
Honourable
you
Stoffel,
withdraw it unconditional?
I've given the minister, in the spirit of maintaining order, there was no direct name of any particular member. So, Minister, the clock is ticking. Please continue.
Honourable member, I think this is an important matter in terms of the tariff situation. We know that everything is happening with the trading partners in the US, in the UK, and Europe. These are important trading partners. We know that some years, about 77% of foreign direct investment came from these particular regions. But the world is now experiencing global geopolitical tensions. But I'm sure that these matters will also be discussed with our GNU partners, because both manufacturing and agriculture, and particularly the automotive industry, is severely affected, particularly from the Eastern Cape. And we need to find a solution and work together in this particular regard. This matter, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we looked at the history of trade and tariffs from the United States. This is not something that comes from this time or even from the time of 2016. This thing comes from the 18th century tariffs in the United States. From the 18th century, you see a pattern of these trade tariffs, and we can show you all the data from that particular period. So, Honorable Member Noko Masipa, you are therefore correct.
Honorable Minister, are you able to take your seat? Honorable Benson and Quenso, is that a point of order?
Chair, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The MEC refers to the members on the other side. Now, by implication, he was referring to the individual, to the collective opposition. For that reason, that I affirm members to affirm his point of order, and your ruling, I think, is really unfair and biased.
Thank you so much, Honorable Benson. I've afforded the Minister an opportunity. There was no direct name. In the spirit of wanting to continue this important point that's on our agenda, I will allow the Minister to continue. Minister.
Deputy Speaker, 47s don't do justice to the big scale and scope and magnitude and depth of the situation. We need more time. I would appreciate if you give us more time, because this is a matter that affects the economy of the Western Cape. It affects our growth for job strategy, because the second pillar of the growth for job strategy is exports, export-led strategy. But given the time constraints, I'm happy and willing to come back to this House once the Cabinet approve the export strategy and the diversification of the strategy. I'm very happy once my Cabinet colleagues support our export diversification strategy. I'm quite happy to come back to this House. But given that my time is up and that you are a gentleman that like to be punctual, I will therefore conclude.
Thank you, Minister. This is a House of Order and we follow rules. Honorable members, we now proceed in terms of Rule 204, questions to the Premier without notice. I have been informed that we've already established the order, and I now recognize the Honorable Lithakong. Honorable Lithakong, before you proceed, I see the Honorable Syed.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, again, thank you. And I'm glad the Premier is now present. I hope he could have heard what I said earlier about your removal from the Cabinet. It was ill-advised. But just let me, and I think he must listen to the hands-on. But just let me just make a point, Deputy Speaker. I'm concerned. I know it was within the rules, and we respect the rules. But within the spirit of democracy and engagement, I think it was out of order for the MEC to take up all the time with his response. No opportunity for follow-ups. But thank you. I will sit now so that Honorable Bosman doesn't have to take up more time, so we can be done at the time he wants to be done.
Thank you. That is not a direct point of order. I'll see the Chief Whip.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I think you perhaps need to caution Honorable Syed and perhaps invite him to a Rules Committee meeting, a workshopping on the rules. We know in the previous Parliament he struggled with the rules. He was educated then by the now Minister of Finance.
Honorable Chief Whip, that's also... Thank you. Honorable members, we will now proceed. The Premier is in the House. Is it a new point of order?
Chair, no. My point of order is to protect my friend, our mutual friend, the MEC of Finance. She was sitting there in the corner, focused on her work. The Chief Whip does not bring her into this particular discussion. Thank you.
All members are duly protected in this House. Honorable Lithakong, are you ready? As soon as I can hear your voice, we will start the time.
I'm now confused, Speaker. Where are we? Because everyone is talking.
Honorable Lithakong, before we proceed with the time, We are in terms of Rule 204, questions to the Premier without notice. The rules also allow for 2 follow-ups by the member posing the initial question. So it will be you, and then you will have 2 follow-ups. Are you ready?
Yes, House Chair. Thank you.
Over to you, Honourable Member.
Thanks, House Chair. Greetings to you, the House at large. Somlomo, the Premier, on your State of the Province address for 2025.
Honourable Lithakong?
Yes.
There's a point of order. I'll stop the time.
Thank you.
Honourable Minister, are you able to raise your point of order?
Yes, Honourable Deputy Speaker. We have positions in this House, and the Honourable Member Lita Kong has just called you a House Chair. That is an incorrect position. You were elected by this House, and you are the Deputy Speaker of the House. Can you just please make an order? Are you now the House Chair, or are you the Deputy Speaker?
Honourable members. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, in terms of our Constitution and designated titles, allow me to once again remind members that it is the honourable thing to refer to the member in the relevant designate that they are either elected or appointed. I'm totally comfortable with people calling me anything, but we have rules, and there's a designation that is either by election or by appointment. Honourable Said, a new point of order.
Let me also through you thank the Honourable Mayor. I can see he's back with a great sense of enthusiasm. I'm sure he has had a rethink on his attitude towards China and Taiwan also, because I can see he's very excited.
Thank you, Honourable Syed. Honourable members, we are not going to prolong or waste any further time. I see the Honourable Lithakong.
The Premier on his State of the Province address of 2025, while touching on the issue of education in the province and its challenges, he never, even with a single word as the leader of this province, mentioned challenges regarding racism in our schools as a challenge and matter of ongoing concern. Despite the result that transpired last year at Pinelands High School, where Black learners were depicted being sold as slaves. Thank you, Somlomo.
Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Not exactly sure what the question is there, that I didn't refer to anything, but obviously, I do take note of the ruling that came out from the Human Rights Commission that found against the EFF, and I mean, that's really relevant. But I also want to say that obviously, we must condemn racism wherever it raises its head, at school level, in the workplace, in civil society, wherever it does, we must condemn it absolutely. Thank you.
Honourable Lithakong, you have 2 follow-ups. Are you going to take?
Thank you, Somlomo. So the Premier, as the head of government in the Western Cape, what steps did you take to attend or address the latest racism incident that took place in York High School in George a few days ago, or any other schools in the province where racism is rampant, since your MEC for Education and the head of department remain not useful on that subject matter? Thank you, Somlomo.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the honourable member to please forward me the details, and I will obviously have a look at those and then inform her of what my actions will be if necessary. Thank you.
Honourable Lithakong, the Premier have given an undertaking. Do you have a final follow-up?
No, Somlomo, I'm fine. I will forward the details to the Premier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ithakong. I now recognize the Honorable Petrus.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Speaker. Thank you. Good afternoon, Premier and colleagues. How does the policies of the Western Cape government help to secure the safety of passengers using public transport like the Go George buses against violent attacks?
Thank you, Honorable Petrus. Premier.
Thank you. Obviously, any violence that happens in this province, they will be covered in various spaces from a policy point of view. But if there's a specific case on one of the public transport offerings, as we've just heard in the House today, in the minibus taxi space, we have certain areas that we can intervene in. And we also work very closely with the South African Police Service, specifically when there's violence in public transport. So in the discussions that Minister Seleku had with law enforcement and SAPS, they used their powers to close the rank while the minister was going through the process with the taxi industry themselves, and also using the powers that he has within our own laws and regulations and the policies that underpin those, that enable him to also close routes, etc., to deal with whatever the issue is. So if there's an issue, obviously there are various layers on how that would be dealt with. Obviously, if one individual is crime or commits a crime against another, there would be an immediate process of laying a charge with the police. But of course, at the same time, because the province has a role to play in specifically public transport and the Go George specifically, then that would obviously have to be raised with the minister himself, and then we would then act accordingly.
Honorable Petrus, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Speaker. Thank you, Premier. Apart from a few vouchers, food parcels, and counseling sessions, why did your government, George Municipality and Go George, never intervene to help the burn victims who were seriously affected and injured in the petrol bomb attack on the 1st of March 2023?
I am very sorry, I'm not actually able to answer that. I'm not sure where the food parcels came from or how that was affected, or what the municipality did or what our province did, but I'm very happy to give the member a detailed answer on that question, would he just submit it to me.
Honorable Petrus, the Premier has undertaken for you to provide the relevant information. Do you have a final follow-up?
Yes, Speaker, I welcome the response. Mr. Premier, are you willing to make a commitment between yourself, George Municipality, and Go George that will ensure that justice be done to the victims of the Go George petrol bomb attack, taking into account the Victims' Charter and the Batu Pelo principles?
I think that the only commitment I can make would be on behalf of myself and post any kind of investigation from this government. I am not able to make a commitment on behalf of an entity or on behalf of another sphere of government. But I think in the same point that once he has submitted the detail to me, I will apply my mind if I need to ask legal advice on it, and then we will obviously follow through with the consequences that are relevant to the findings once I have that information.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. We proceed to the Chief Whip of the Official Opposition. I recognize the Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, my question arises from last week. Last week, I was fortunate to be watching on the virtual platform the debate, and I invited my community to watch with me because the topic was on the housing backlog, a matter that is always a pertinent question in my community when I go home as to how do you address it. As a member, do you raise the issues? Even today, I've asked them to tune in because all the follow-up questions they were asking, I said, I have opportunity today to ask to the Premier. Now, listening right through the whole debate, something that lacked was to hear what is the plan with regards to the backlog. There is a backlog here in the Western Cape. How is the Premier intending to address that backlog? When can people say that, okay, the DA was in their inputs, were after the good party in their inputs, they were saying we have about 600 and something and 665,000 houses of backlog, and it will take a certain amount of years for that backlog to be addressed. But now, as we speak, people don't have homes. What is the plan to address that? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that, as the honourable member said, she was tuned in and she listened. And I also listened, and the honourable minister gave a very substantial answer. And so my answer would be exactly the same thing. If you'd listen to the minister, that is the plan on how to deal with the backlog. Thank you.
Honourable Barnes, your follow-up.
Deputy Speaker, I think part of the reasons that I came back with a question was because of the attitude that one is picking up, is that there's no urgency to address the issue. The appetite, it is not there. Although we are having our back and forth, does the Premier know, for example, that currently as we speak, the backyard dwellers in the past used to be when we are old, we cannot stay with our parents in our homes, then we must stay in the backyard. But currently, as we speak, in communities, the backyard dwellers are no longer there. It's different families that are staying now in Honaiza. Honaiza het nou taster geword. And the appetite you get is that we are the best running provincial government. Mense bly in Honaiza. That is the reality.
Honourable Barnes, order. Honourable Barnes, I wish to remind you that in terms of the rule, you can ask a follow-up question. You do not need to justify your question. Just ask the question.
Can I rephrase it? Is the Premier aware that people are staying in dog houses as we speak?
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier.
Yes, I am fully aware of the backyard issue in our province. In actual fact, this province is the only province in South Africa that actually has a plan for backyard dwellers, and how the only province, the only one in South Africa, number one. And number two, the plan is to move to 30% of allocation of housing towards people in backyards. They must make sure that they're on the housing waiting list to qualify.
Thank you very much. Honourable Barnes, your second follow-up question.
Deputy Speaker, in 2023, a community activist demanded action from the Premier with regards to the same topic. What action has the Premier taken from 2023 from the community activist up until 2025 on the housing backlog?
Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much. First of all, if the honourable member had really listened to what the honourable Simmer said, she would have received those answers. Secondly, I've spoken now to the only province that deals with backyards. Go and have a look at any of the other provinces. And then thirdly, if you have a look at the systematic developments that have been announced and delivered on by Minister Simmers in the last 5 years, you would have noticed that there's a systematic town by town, municipality by municipality difference in delivering housing to citizens. At the same time, the innovations around what we learned from the Conradi site in massification or bulk delivery of mixed-use development, which has now evolved into repeated announcements of inner city and inner town developments that's really making a difference to the housing backlog. It is absolutely unique, refreshing to see this kind of innovation taking place in real delivery to people where we are. And of course, we're the fastest growing province in South Africa. So I suppose the most important thing, if we really are to get a delivery...
Premier, please take your seat. Honourable members, order members. Honourable Mkondlo, I'm on the floor. Honourable members, there has been a question posed to the Premier. The Premier is responding. If you do not like the response, there's other avenues that you can follow in terms of the rules. But you cannot continue with this running commentary.
Then you must stop lying there. You must stop.
Order. 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 All honorable members. Honorable members, the table staff, can I please ask that you mute all members on the hybrid system? Before I recognize the Chief Whip, I want to address the fact that if as members, when you choose to be part of the hybrid or be part of the sitting using the hybrid system, you need to use the hand raise functionality to draw my attention to a point of order. What has just happened is completely against the rules in terms of Rule 40 of our standing rules. Honourable members, I'm on the floor. And the same respect that I provide or offer to you as members when you are on the floor, I expect the same when I'm on the floor. Interjections in terms of Rule 40 is not allowed for members participating of the sitting on the hybrid system. You use the hand raise functionality, so the honourable member that just unmuted herself, that is completely against the rules, and I will make a considered ruling at the next sitting. Honourable Chief Whip, is that a point of order?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the honourable member who interjected and broke that rule is also in violation of Rule 58 as well as Rule 59. And I think for this sitting, we have to insist that the honourable member must withdraw that comment.
Honourable Chief Whip, what is the comment?
The Honourable Windvogel said he is lying, referring to the Premier, saying that the Premier is lying.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to is that a point of order on a point of order, or is that a new point of order?
Speaker, I think you have made a ruling, and we heard the ruling. The addition on your ruling, when you are done making a ruling, it's unacceptable.
No, that is a different order. That's a different point of order. Honourable Chief Whip, I hear your point of order, and that is not a point of order, and that is my ruling. Honourable Chief Whip, is that a new point of order? Referring to a member and saying the member is lying is not against the rules. Deliberately misleading is against the rules. I want to caution members, however, that if you order, I want to caution members that if you are casting aspersions on the integrity of a member, then that is against the rules. Honourable Chief Whip, what's your point of order? With that being said, Honourable Premier, you may continue.
Thank you very much. And of course, if the honourable member is really keen on getting the full data on these questions, then put a proper written question in and we will give chapter and verse. While the to and fro was happening, if you just Google backyard dwellers Western Cape plan, you will get a very detailed plan in the system, and of course that would be given as an answer. But just randomly, if you have a look at Cape Agulhas, 50% of that housing program is for backyard dwellers. If you look at Vredendal, 25% of the latest housing development is backyard dwellers. Forest Village, 30%, and so it goes on, Speaker. So of course, they are in this province taken into account. We understand the backlog, and we've got to make sure that one by one we undo this legacy. In addition to that, the minister also has a program specifically in rural municipalities that makes provision for farm workers in exactly the same way. But thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. I recognise order. Honourable members, Honourable members, have you finished your dialogue now? Across the floor, while the citizens of this province is watching you, that voted you into office to represent their interests and not your own interests. Are we done? Can I continue? With 4 minutes left on questions to the Premier, without notice, I recognise the Honourable Van Minen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Premier is, what is the provincial government's response to the South African Police Service's recent acknowledgement of a staffing crisis within its detective service, evidenced by the re-recruitment of former detectives, and what assessment has been made out of the impact of ongoing vacancies on public safety outcomes in the province? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Van Minen, from that question. I actually thought I was going to get this question from the ANC, but thank you very much for the question. It happens to be that the South African Police Services came and reported to the Provincial Cabinet yesterday, and I brought along the report that they gave us because we have ongoing crime growth. We have ongoing reduction in police numbers, in police officer numbers. We are now sitting at just under 13,000 active police men and women in our province. You know, when I became the Premier in 2019, we had just under 20,000 active police officers in our province. The resourcing is absolutely shocking. And you speak specifically of the announcement made that we've got some extra detectives pulled out of retirement. I support that 100% because at least that is bringing some skills back into the system. If we cannot get the convictions, I mean, what use was the arrests in the first place? But we in South Africa, in a detective space, we have 8,400 detectives short in South Africa. In our province, we're 902 vacancies when it comes to detectives. So of course we're not going to get the convictions. I told you about the active police officers in the system. If I go to just the budget spend and how it is below inflation rate every single year, that SAPS's budget nationally, it really is a tragedy. I look at that in contrast to the city's budget, which we know is now the average is 4.9% over years now for police. It's 34% increase from the city in crime fighting, trying to use local authority money and law enforcement regulation to try and fill that gap. But of course, we need much, much more than that. So it is a huge, huge problem. And, you know, the arrests, even the arrests, and I looked at some of the numbers, there's some really impressive numbers when it comes to arrests. But then it doesn't help that people are just back on the street again and go and create or do exactly the same crime over and again, because we need the conviction. So your point about those extra members being brought in, we absolutely support it. And in actual fact, I've just had a reply from on my message now from Minister Kachalia, because I've asked him to please, we really urgently need a meeting in the Western Cape. So we are due to have a phone call straight after this sitting, and we will push for those more numbers in policing.
Thank you very much. Honourable van Minnen, your first follow-up.
Thank you very much. My question is the Premier aware what the current average caseload per detective in the province is?
Thank you very much.
Honourable Premier.
The actual numbers, as I actually repeated those numbers last year, I mean, last week in the sitting, but we know that the average should be 60 cases, which is a global norm per investigator. And then if you go into the actual numbers, depending on the policing precinct, it sometimes goes up to 300 and 400 cases, and sometimes under 500 cases per investigator. And you know where they're the highest? Where crime is the highest. So they don't get the resources where it is really necessary, where we have debates in the House about crime and our children being shot at, and go and have a look at the resources in those specific gang-related places, taxi violence spaces, and extortion spaces. And that's where you will see those investigators are under such pressure with hundreds of cases each. You cannot expect to get convictions if that's the kind of system that we have in place. And we need to drastically change that. We need to drastically push resources into the areas where crime is the highest. Data and evidence is how you should fight criminals. And we need to make sure we get that right when it comes to the South African Police Services.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, that also brings us to the end of questions to the Premier without notice in terms of Rule 204. And we now move on to statements by members in terms of Rule 145. I recognise the DA.
Baie dankie, agbare Speaker. Die kunste en kultuur is meer as net 'n buitemuurse aktiwiteit. Dit is deel van onderrig, welstand, toerisme en maatskaplike en ekonomiese ontwikkeling. Dit is deel van sosiale kohesie. Dit vorm en bou ons gemeenskappe. Dit alles sluit aan by die doel van die Kunste Kaap Hoërskool Dramafees, wat in samewerking met die Suidoosterfees weer onlangs met 10 skole van regoor die Weskaap met sukses aangebied is. Die platform bied skoolleerders die geleentheid om hul kreatiwiteit, opinies en onderwerpe wat vir hulle belangrik is te deel. Deur deel te neem, ervaar die leerders die teater in sy volle glorie met ligte, klank en aksie. Die skoolleerders leer ook hoe belangrik dissipline is vir 'n kunstenaar en kry die geleentheid om te groei, om gehoor te word en deel te wees van inspirasie. Aan elke opvoeder en leerder wie betrokke was by vanjaar se produksies en die wie al begin werk het aan 2026, dankie vir jou toewyding, opoffering, deursettingsvermoë en kreatiwiteit. Dankie, agbare Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognise the ANC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. Today I rise to confront the DA-led City of Cape Town's neoliberal austerity offensive against persons living with disabilities, following its decision to cut the budget for the dial-a-ride service. For all to know, this service was established long before the DA took control of the city. It has been a lifeline for thousands of people with disability. Speaker, the DA decision to reduce its funding is not only social and economically irresponsible, it is an outright attack on one of the most vulnerable sectors of our society. Speaker, the claim that a letter was written to the Minister of Social Development is nothing but more than a deflection. The DA knows very well that funding requests must follow due process through Provincial Department of Social Development. This is a case of podcast scapegoating rather than taking responsibility. The dial-a-ride service is not a matter of welfare, it is a matter of mobility, rights, and dignity. For this reason, We argue that the Department of Mobility must take full responsibility to ensure the continuation and expansion of the service. We call on all disability organizations to unite and form a broad popular front to resist this austerity attack. We further call on the people of Cape Town to stand in solidarity with persons living with disability and to rise against this neoliberal assault by the DA government. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize the PA.
Honorable Speaker, it is with great sadness that I rise today to reflect on the tragic loss of Constable Cortland Lekay, a young man of only 23 years old, who was brutally stabbed to death in the early hours of Sunday morning in Gaba Road, Commandant Kosi, Beaufort West. Two suspects, aged 15 and 20, have been arrested and remain in custody awaiting their day in court once officially charged. While justice must take its course, I cannot ignore the most troubling fact before us. A 15-year-old child was out at such an hour of the night in a place of entertainment where they should never have been in the first place. Honorable Speaker, this tragedy forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our children are increasingly being drawn into lives of violence, crime, and reckless behavior at alarming young ages. As a parent myself, I find myself asking difficult questions. Where was the supervision? Where was the guidance? And most importantly, how do we as a society allow this to continue? I want to extend my deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of the late Constable Lekay. May they find strength in this painful time, and may his memory remind us all of the dangers of our youth are facing. But condolences alone are not enough. As the community of Beaufort West, and indeed as South Africans, we need to take back our communities. We need to return to being the village that raises every child, whether they are our biological children or not. Protecting the next generation is not the duty of parents alone. It is the responsibility of all of us.
Honorable Constable, can you please conclude? Your time has expired.
If we build safer and brighter future, it must start with us in our homes, in our schools, in our communities. Let us stand together to protect our children. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize the DA.
This year's annual BFAP report has confirmed the importance of Westgrow growth for job strategy in building a resilient export-led economy for the Western Cape. The report showed that global wine consumption declined by 3.3% year on year, dropping to 21.4 billion litres in 2024, the lowest level in almost 65 years. South Africa also experienced a 2.8% decline, falling to 456 million litres, driven by inflation, rising costs, and long-term shifts in consumer behavior. In response, the industry noted that South Africa's strength lies in its diversity, expertise, and innovation, with producers increasingly elevating bulk wine into premium offerings. However, to fully unlock this potential, government must provide an enabling environment, something the corrupt ANC has been sleeping on for 30 years. ANC, you have missed your alarm. Stop sleeping. It is time to wake up. We need regulatory certainty, efficient ports, and reliable transport system. Faster turnaround times at ports and stronger logistics will lower costs and boost competitiveness. At the same time, trade agreements, tariff reductions, and proactive diplomatic engagement are so vital to opening higher value markets for local producers. The industry further highlighted the urgent need for policy clarity on excess duties, labor regulations, and water rights to encourage sustained investment in quality. May I also add that we are tired of the corruption of the ANC. In the context of 30% US tariff, it is more critical than ever to deepen economic resilience through investor summits and Westgrow's global reach to help find new markets and grow their premium presence worldwide. By partnering with the private sector on port operations and combining trade promotion with
Honourable Member,
infrastructure
please
upgrades
conclude. Your
and
time has
regulatory
expired.
stability, Westgro and G4J will strengthen our economy, insulate it from external shocks, and
Thank you
chart
very
a path
much, Honourable
of
Member.
inclusive
Please take your seat.
export-led growth. Thank you, Chair.
Order. Order. Honourable members, honourable members, you do not have to agree with the statements being delivered, but you cannot drown out the speakers on the floor. I also wish to draw your attention, honourable members, there's a digital clock on the screens in front of you for you to be reminded of your time in terms of the rules. I recognise the EFF.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the EFF would like to take this opportunity and call for action to be taken following racism incidents that took place across 3 different schools in the Western Cape in the past week. This follows events that took place in York High School in George, Knysna High, and Deersville High School in Saldanha Bay, where racial slurs were used to address Black learners. Speaker, the fact that these incidents took place within a space of a week, were reported in different parts of the province, is a testament that it is a problem recurring and that needs urgent attention and appears to be at the top of the iceberg. Speaker, the majority of these similar incidents are handled quietly and kept secret by those running those schools, with the victims of these acts remaining quiet due to fear of reprisal. It is for these reasons why most of the victims will only narrate the racism experience once they have later completed their studies in these schools. Speaker, despite last year's incident that took place in Pinelands High School, where Black learners were placed in a cage ready to be shipped out on a slavery market, and other similar incidents in the Western Cape, the Premier of this province did not see it fitting during his SOPA to address these issues as a crisis in our schools, and which is in need of urgent attention. Speaker, the EFF calls for a uniform code which will govern Western Cape schools on the subject of racism, and calls for the Provincial Education Department to institutionalize programs across all schools in this province aimed at raising awareness on the issue of racism in schools and the dangers of racism and its repercussions. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognise the ANC.
Honorable Speaker, the latest quarterly labour force survey by Stats SA paints a worrying picture for the Western Cape under the DA government's so-called Jobs for Growth strategy. Far from delivering jobs, this province has suffered a blow to employment. In Q1 of 2025, the unemployment rate in the Western Cape stood at 19.6%. In the latest Q2 report, it has climbed to 21.1%, a 1.5% increase. That means 117,000 jobs were lost in this province in just one quarter, making the Western Cape the third highest in job losses after Limpopo. The expanded employment rate now sits at 27%. What makes this even more alarming is that the Western Cape is an agricultural hub. Stats SA's 2023 annual agricultural survey confirmed that our province employs 25.5% of all agricultural workers in the country, the highest share followed by Limpopo at 13.4%. Yet in this past quarter, the agricultural sector had shed 24,000 jobs, that is a 2.6% decline. While Gauteng recorded an increase of 95,000 jobs, the Eastern Cape 89,000, and even Limpopo at 27,000. The Western Cape stands out for the wrong reasons, sliding backwards from a gain of 69,000 jobs in Q2 of 2024 to a loss of 117,000 in Q2 of 2025, a 59%. When the DA launched its so-called Growth for Jobs strategy in 2023, it promised to create over 600,000 jobs by 2035, with Premier Windy even pledging 800,000 job opportunities in the next few years. Remember making that promise in Athlone, Premier Windy. Yet today, instead of jobs created, the Western Cape has lost 117,000 jobs in just the last quarter. This is not jobs for growth, it's jobs lost under DA mismanagement. The global context cannot be ignored. The United States proposed tariffs on citrus imports and uncertainty over other trade deals posed a direct threat to jobs, especially in the agricultural sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honourable Speaker, our schools are under serious financial strain, and this crisis is threatening the quality of education across the country. The challenge is simple. Almost all the growth in education budgets over the past 3 years has gone into salaries, leaving less and less for the things that matter most in the classroom. Today, nearly 80% of provincial education budgets go to employee compensation, up from 76% just a few years ago. In some provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, that figure is as high as 83%. This means only 17% of budgets remain for essentials such as textbooks, learning materials, scholar transport, school meals, and IT services. To put this into perspective, while overall education spending grew by about 4.6% per year since 2022, inflation has eaten up most of that, and salary agreements have outpaced everything else. As a result, goods and services budgets have barely grown at all, and in some provinces like Gauteng, they've even declined. The consequences are clear: overcrowded classrooms, outdated resources, and schools that cannot invest in infrastructure or modern teaching tools. We cannot allow this trend to continue. Honourable Speaker, we urgently need to rethink how education funds are being structured. Yes, teachers deserve fair salaries, but not at the cost of learner resources. We need sustainable models that protect classroom quality, improve efficiency, and ultimately focus on better learning outcomes for our children. Without this, we risk an education system that simply cannot deliver for the future. Thank you.
Baie dankie aan die agbare lid. I recognize the Freedom Front Plus.
Baie dankie, Speaker. Speaker, namens die Vryheidsfront Plus beoog ek om 'n mosie ter tafel te lê teen volgende sitting. En dit sal lees om ordelike verstedelingsplan vir die Weskaap te debatteer. In English, it will call that this House debates for an urgent need for orderly urbanization plan for the Western Cape within the confines of the National Constitution, and that it is deemed to be in the best interest of the Western Cape and our continued long-term economic stability and development. Migration is a worldwide phenomenon. It can be advantageous, but if not orderly, it can have disastrous negative effects on South Africa's economic Hong Kong, namely the Western Cape province. We need to have a futuristic view of the Western Cape and not lose total control of what is happening to our beloved province. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, for decades, our communities in Cape Town have lived under the grip of gangsterism. Families are trapped in fear. Local businesses are destroyed and lives are lost daily to senseless gun violence. In many of our townships, gangsters have become the rulers while ordinary people suffer. Gangsterism is not only a crime problem, it is a social injustice. The local municipality has failed our youth. The expanded public works program is not enough. It does not create permanent, decent employment without opportunities. Our young people are vulnerable to gang recruitment instead of building a future of dignity. Honourable Speaker, Islam teaches us that the sanctity of life is sacred, and all faith traditions remind us of our duty to protect the vulnerable. That is why government, civil society, and the religious leaders must work together to address the root causes. The neglected state of township infrastructure continues to be a breeding ground for gangsterism, and this cannot continue. We must also ask, why is it that Whenever Pagat marches in a crime-ridden area, police deployment suddenly triples. Yet in our daily reality, where shootings happen every night, our people are left unprotected. Why can't that same level of policing be permanent in high-risk areas? I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I now recognize ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, earlier this year, 23 South Africans were rescued from Myanmar. They arrived back in South Africa on the 27th of March 2025. It is alleged that they were victims of human trafficking. They were lured to Thailand by an employment agency that promised lucrative job offers. These offers were advertised on various social media platforms. Through the adverts, the victims were promised good salaries, free accommodation, and paid travel expenses. However, once they arrived in Thailand, they were taken against their will to Myanmar. There, they were subjected to physical torture and forced labor. They were intimidated and received brutal treatment. Speaker, human trafficking is morally wrong and evil. It robs people of their dignity and plummets them into despair. People, like we know, can be trafficked for sex, enslavement, child labor, or even sale of body organs. They can be forced into marriage, illegal adoption, and so on and so on. But Speaker, the plea of the ACDP calls especially on young people to take great care before accepting international job offers. We urge young people, when it comes to international job offers, to please verify it before taking the plunge to go overseas. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize the DA.
Honorable Speaker, the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape is deeply concerned about the recent surge in taxi violence that continues to endanger commuters, operators, and our communities. This violence has already claimed too many lives, disrupted schooling and work attendance, and undermined confidence in our public transport system. As an immediate intervention, the DA in the Western Cape will be calling for a joint meeting of the Standing Committee on Police Oversight and Community Safety and Mobility. At this meeting, we'll invite the Provincial Minister of Mobility, the National Police Commissioner, and the Western Cape Provincial Police Commissioner to discuss urgent coordinated interventions to stabilize the situation. Speaker, the safety of communities, especially commuters, must be our top priority. The DA in the Western Cape condemned these acts of violence in the strongest terms, and we call for immediate action to reduce incidents in this vital industry. The people of the Western Cape deserve safe, reliable transport and a secure environment. I thank you.
Baie dankie aan die agbare lid. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of members' statements in terms of Rule 145, subsection 6. I now give one or more members of the executive present an opportunity to respond to member statements for not more than 5 minutes collectively, if they so wish. I recognize the Minister of Mobility, Minister Seleko.
Baie dankie Speaker. Somtyds Speaker moet ons nou nie politiek speel waar nou nie politiek van toepassing is nie. And I think we need to understand the service of Dial a Ride. It's a specialized service which is not been supported by any national grant. It is currently funded from the ratepayers of the City of Cape Town. And we as the Department of Mobility have been funding it about 10 million every year. It's a specialized service and there has been a deficit of about 1 million for the last 12 years. So, but I need to also to share with the House
I had a conversation with my counterpart from the side of the city of Cape Town, and everybody that is affected, organizations, they had a meeting with Councillor Quintus, where he explained the financial implication of the service, and they came to a conclusion saying that they are going to look at other avenues and how we can co-fund the shortage so that the service can continue, because the service is critical and there's a need for that particular service. But currently, if you look in our country, financially, there are financial constraints, and we are not immune from that. But we are working with, the affected parties, and the politicians, they need to get the facts instead of trying to use any opportunity to score political points. In closure, Speaker, I need to share with the House that the court actually gave us the interim interdict, which is a step in the right direction. It will help us as mobility to make sure that there's stability in the minibus taxi industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Minister, Minister Seleko. If I recognize the Minister Order, I recognize the Honourable Minister of Education, Minister Mania.
Thank you, Speaker. I wish to give the House the assurance that on the matters raised in respect of schools, that these matters, and they are serious matters, are being investigated by our school governing bodies. And I think the House should note that at least one opposition party in respect of one of the schools complimented the schools on the swift action that they had taken. And I wish to give all members of the House the further assurance that we will not tolerate racism in schools in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Baie dankie aan die agbare minister. Are there any further? I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you. There's a few minutes left, so I must respond to the Honourable Nkondlo, raising issues around jobs numbers and the Growth for Jobs plan. And it's great. We need to have a strong debate on this. But I mean, we also need to be upfront with the data. And sure, we have seen seasonality in our region kicking in. We've had a whole long debate today and a discussion on question time around the implication of tariffs. But what the Honourable Member forgot to put in place or remind this House of when looking at the data and the statistics from our data that we received on the quarterly labour force survey was that this province is 69,000 jobs up on where we were this time last year, bearing in mind last year would have also had seasonality. We are still 21.1% unemployment rate versus South Africa under the rest of ANC rule at 33.2%. That's 12.1% difference between this province and the rest of the ANC-run South Africa. We have the highest participation rate in the economy at 67.9%, the highest in South Africa. Job absorption rate, the highest in South Africa at 53%. That's 13% better than the engine room of our economy called Gauteng. Gauteng's only at 40.2%. The engine room of our economy, run by the ANC, totally failing everyone in our country. Totally unacceptable. So quite frankly, we need to get growth for jobs right. We should actually all be working together on this. And in actual fact, the most important place to work is those provinces where it is totally dismally failing. And that's why this province will work with other provinces that are prepared to work with us. And we've had a great session with the province of KwaZulu-Natal in a 2-day workshop of how we're going to work together to get much better outcomes in our province and their province. That's how we actually make South Africa a better place, not the kind of statement that the Honourable Nkondlo puts on the table and carries on with verbal, I was going to say the D word, but just verbal commentary running through on and on and on and on and on. Thank you, Speaker.
And that brings us to the end. Order, members, can I please ask that the Chief Whips please assist me, because I've been asking for the entire day that members please adhere to the rules. Interjections are allowed. Running commentary and drowning out the speaker is not allowed. Honourable members, we still have two sessions on the order paper that we need to get through, two sections. So can I please ask that the Chief Whips assist me to ensure that we get through the order paper? That brings us to the end of member statements. In terms of Rule 151, all notices of motions by members are required to have to be delivered by the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We now move on to motions without notice in terms of Rule 150. I would like to inform you that in terms of the standing rule pertaining to motions without notice, condolences and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 26th of August 2025. Members are also reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolences will not be allowed in the sitting that have not been processed by the Programming Authority. And I have been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting of the 26th of August, political parties submitted the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in this sitting of the House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purposes of the minutes, call out the honourable members' names who have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following members' motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows. Honourable G. Brunkhuis, Honourable M.K. Syed, Honourable A.P. Barnes, Honourable B. Ngensu, Honourable P.Z. Lekker, Honourable B.M. Ngensu, Honourable N.D. Nkondlo, Honourable M.K. Syed, Honourable B. Ngensu, Honourable B. Ngensu, Honourable B. Ngensu, Honourable N.P. Masipa, Honourable B.M. van Minnen, Honourable B.M. van Minnen, Honourable B.M. van Minnen, Honourable B.M. van Minnen, Honourable P. Johnson, Honourable P. Johnson, and Professor N. Mbombo. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to, and the motions will appear in the minutes of the proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's name, as if the member had read them out aloud. Honourable members, I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 150, subsection 3, subsection D. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that in terms of Rule 150, subsection 3, subsection D, there will only be 30 minutes allocated, and I recognize the Honourable Syed.
Honourable Speaker, thank you very much. I move without notice that the House strongly condemns the actions of the Mayor of the City of Cape Town, Jordan Hill Lewis, for appointing his Chief of Staff, James Brent Steyn, to the Castle Control Board, an organ of state that governs and manages the Castle of Good Hope on behalf of the National Minister of Defence and Military Veterans. The House notes that the appointment is nothing less than a blatant act of political patronage and cadre deployment, made not on the basis of expertise in heritage, culture, or tourism, but purely on the grounds of political loyalty and proximity to power. By choosing his right-hand man over a city councillor, who is an elected public representative, the mayor has not only undermined the principles of accountability and transparency, but has also exposed the blatant hypocrisy of the DA, which continuously decries cadre deployment whilst quietly practicing it behind closed doors. The House further notes that the Castle of Good Hope is a national heritage site of profound historical and cultural significance to the people of South Africa and must never be reduced to a playground for DA political insiders and loyalists. The mayor's actions demonstrate a disturbing attempt to plant a political pawn in the accounting authority of the castle, thereby threatening the integrity of this institution. This House welcomes the mayor's stated interest in the castle and encourages him to visit, to engage and support programs that preserve and promote this historical site. However, The mayor must immediately withdraw this inappropriate appointment and instead ensure that a duly elected councillor or an appropriately qualified representative with the requisite expertise in heritage, culture and tourism is nominated to serve on the Castle Control Board. The House resolves that the DA's double standards on cadre deployment be exposed and that all appointments to bodies of historical, cultural and public significance be made on the basis of merit, accountability and service to the people, not on political allegiance or loyalty. I so move.
Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. Recognize the Honourable Syed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move without notice that this House notes the recent announcement of the Western Cape Energy Resilience Plan by Premier Alan Winde and welcomes with caution the intentions outlined therein. While the plan speaks to the urgent need to address the ongoing energy crisis that continues to strangle households, communities and businesses, this House stresses that plans alone will not keep the lights on. What is required are clear timelines, transparent implementation, and measurable outcomes. This House further welcomes the appointment of a former Eskom executive member who was active here in the Western Cape, Mr. Alvi Lester, to lead aspects of the plan, recognizing his experience and expertise, especially in the Western Cape. However, this House insists that his appointment must be accompanied by a clear mandate to ensure that the plan is people-centered, inclusive, and responsive to lived realities of ordinary citizens across the province, especially those in historically disadvantaged and marginalized communities. This House also calls for the plan to prioritize local economic beneficiation, ensuring that opportunities for skills development, job creation, enterprise support, and procurement are directed towards local communities, SMMEs, cooperatives, rather than being captured by private interests or external contractors. The House demands that the Premier presents a clear and accountable timeline for the implementation of the Energy Resilience Plan, including regular progress reports to this legislature through the Standing Committee on the Premier, so that people of the Western Cape can judge for themselves whether this plan delivers real energy security or remains another political promise. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Barnes.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that the House extends.
Honourable Barnes, I will now protect you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Honourable members, there's a member on the floor.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House extends its sincere condolences to the family and friends and colleagues of the late Matilda Baines. Ms. Baines served as a Western Cape delegate to the National Council of Provinces. She was a valued and a beloved member of our delegation whose commitment to public service and tireless efforts in her oversight role, particularly in social sector, earned her respect of all who worked with her. Her passing is a great loss, not only to this institution, but also to her constituency and the people of our province, whom she served with integrity and compassion. We honor her memory and express our gratitude for the years of her services. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Barnes. For procedure, I'm going to put it to the House, but I will also address that at the end of the sitting. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objection. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Barnes.
Speaker, I move without notice that this House welcomes and commends the proactive and professional work of the South African Police Services National Intervention Unit in Gugulethu, Cape Town, where officers have successfully traced and apprehended suspects involved in illegal firearm possession and related criminal activities. During operations at the property in NY4, the NIU confiscated an AK-47 rifle and ammunition concealed under a mattress and arrested the suspect without any exchange of gunfire, ensuring the safety of the community. The House further notes that subsequent searches on Great Dutch Street led to the recovery of additional firearms and ammunition, with the second suspect also arrested and set to appear in the Athlone Magistrates Court. This operation demonstrates the effectiveness, discipline, and restraints of sub-officers in ensuring that dangerous criminals are removed from our communities while minimizing the risk to its residents. This House commends the NIU for their courage, diligence, and commitment to public safety and calls on all law enforcement agencies to continue acting with the same professionalism and restraint in keeping the citizens of Cape Town safe. I so move.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honorable Lecker.
Speaker, that the House expresses its deep concern over the alarming rise in attacks on social workers in the Western Cape, with 54 incidents reported since April 2024, including hijackings and intimidation, particularly in townships such as Khayelitsha, Mfuleni, Kukulethu, Mitchell's Plain, Nyanga East, Philippi, Blue Downs, and Kleinvlei. These attacks have forced the Department of Social Development to implement safety measures such as removing identifying information from government vehicles, advising social workers to travel in pairs, and recommending police escorts for high-risk areas. Yet the threats continue, leaving vulnerable communities without essential social services. That the House condemns in the strongest terms all acts of violence and intimidation against social workers and calls for immediate and decisive action by law enforcement agencies to investigate these attacks, apprehend the perpetrators, and ensure justice is served. Further, that this House urges the Department of Social Development to allocate sufficient resources to enhance the safety and security of social workers, including the provision of protective measures, risk assessment, and emergency support, while working closely with communities and law enforcement to develop long-term strategies that safeguard frontline workers. Finally, that this House calls on all members of the Provincial Parliament to support these initiatives and to raise public awareness of dangers faced by social workers, ensuring that their crucial work continues without the fear of attack. I so move.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize Honorable Lecker.
That this House expresses its grave concern over the recent escalation of taxi-related violence in Cape Town, which has resulted in multiple fatalities and injuries. On 26th of August 2025, 2 individuals were shot dead and 2 others injured at the Makassar taxi rank, believed to be linked to an ongoing conflicts between rival taxi association, namely Codeta and Kata, over taxi disputes and fare disagreements. This follows earlier incidents on 25th August 2025, where 2 separate shootings occurred at the Vuyani taxi rank in Khayelitsha and the Luzuko taxi rank in Philippi East, leading to the 2 deaths of 2 individuals and the injury of 7 others. That this House condemns these acts of violence in the strongest terms and calls for the immediate and decisive action from law enforcement agencies to apprehend those responsible and restore peace to the affected communities. Furthermore, that this House urges the relevant authorities to engage with all stakeholders in the taxi industry to address the underlying issues contributing to the violence, including fair disputes and root official conflicts, and to implement measures to ensure safety of both commuters and taxi operators. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the achtbare Stoffel.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the African National Congress, motion without notice that the House knows with profound concern the systematic targeting and assassination of journalists in Gaza, including the recent killing of Asna Ali Sharif, the Al Jazeera crew, and Reuters cameraman Hossan al-Mashari, amongst others, in attacks such as the double tap strike on Nasser Hospital. This House further acknowledges that media outlets, including Reuters and other major Western organizations, have repeatedly disseminated false claims and propaganda justifying these killings, thereby failing in their ethical duty to provide accurate reporting and to protect journalists in conflict zones. The House condemns the role of such media complicity in enabling violations of international humanitarian law and the dehumanization of surveillance, and expresses solidarity with journalists in Gaza who risk and in many cases lost their lives in pursuit of the truth. The House called on all media institutions to uphold the highest standard of ethical journalism, to critically assess claims made by parties to conflict, and to actively report on violation against journalists and civilians to prevent further loss of life. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Stoffel. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I now recognize the achtbare Windvogel.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move without notice that the House notes with deep concern the City of Cape Town's decision to drastically downscale the dial-a-ride service, a move that will come into effect on the 8th September 2025. The revised eligible criteria restrict the service only to wheelchair users and those with a severe walking impairment, thereby excluding persons with visual, hearing, cognitive, and other disabilities who depend on this essential service for access to healthcare, education, work, and social participation. This exclusionary decision, described by the Western Cape Network on Disability as devastating, undermines the dignity and constitutional rights of thousands of residents and places an additional financial burden on those who cannot afford alternative forms of transport, such as e-hailing. This House further notes that the service will now only be limited to home-to-work trips, denying disabled residents the right to move freely to clinics, shops, recreational spaces, and cultural venues. Organizations such as the Unmute Dance Company, which supported artists with disabilities, have already warned of the severe impact this will have on their ability to operate on the lives of their members. The House therefore calls on the City of Cape Town to immediately suspend the implementation of the new dial-a-ride policy, to engage in meaningful consultation with disability rights organizations, and to redesign the service in an inclusive, transparent, and non-discriminatory manner. We reaffirm the principle of nothing about us without us and demand that the city upholds its constitutional and moral obligation to ensure equitable access to public transport for all. I so move.
Baie dankie, agbare Windvogel. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Mkontlo.
Speaker, I move that this House notes with concern the recent response by Mr. Ian Cameron, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Crime, to the African National Congress's statement on rising crime in the Western Cape, in which he demonstrated a clear partisan bias by defending his political party rather than fulfilling his constitutional and parliamentary duty to exercise independent oversight over the executive. This House further observes that Mr. Cameron's conduct reveals a fundamental misunderstanding or disregard of his role as chairperson of a portfolio committee. Instead of holding the executive accountable for its failures to address crime, he has repeatedly shielded his party from scrutiny, thereby undermining the very purpose of parliamentary oversight. Such behavior threatens to render Parliament toothless and ineffective, repeating the same pattern of partisan dysfunction already evident under DA leadership in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Accordingly, this House calls for the immediate removal of Mr. Ian Cameron as chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Crime, as his continued leadership represents a liability to the functioning of oversight, the integrity of the legislative process, and the safety and security of the citizens of this province. Parliament must reaffirm its independence and insist that chairs of portfolio committees act in the interest of accountability, not party politics. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mkontlo. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize Honourable Murray.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, on behalf of the Free and From Plus, I move without notice that this House notes the negative impact that gang shootings and crime is having on the mental state of our young scholars and matric scholars who have this week started with their preliminary exams. Acts of violence like these poses an additional barrier to education for children from under-resourced and crime-ridden communities such as in Mitchells Plain, Delft, Bonteheuwel, Menenberg, Bishop Lavis, Langa, Khayelitsha, and Philippi, and among other poverty-stricken areas in the Cape Metro region. That the Minister of Safety, Community Safety, and the Minister of Education in the Western Cape take decisive joint measures to ensure the safety of our children and matriculants during this time. That we identify problematic schools and devise a plan to prevent a spilling over effect so that copycat murders do not become a norm in the Western Cape. That this House condemns acts of criminality against our children and call for an end to the violence on the Cape Flats. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and it will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Masipa.
Honorable Speaker, I move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House acknowledges the vital role of community journalism in strengthening democracy, building social cohesion, and amplifying local voices. Notes the recent RLAP's First Thursday event, which celebrated community journalists and marked the third anniversary of RLAP's House as a hub for creativity and storytelling in Cape Town, recognizes that platforms like First Thursdays contribute to the creative economy, support small businesses, and create opportunities for collaboration, objectives that align closely with the Western Cape Jobs Summit scheduled for November 2025. Further affirms that showcasing the province's creative sector and community-driven initiatives will complement the Job Summit's focus on investment, job creation, and economic growth, positioning the Western Cape as a leading hub for innovation and opportunity. I so move.
Baie dankie, agbare lid. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections, agreed to. I recognize Honourable Van Minen.
The DA moves without notice that this House notes the attempt by various opposition parties who have chosen to prioritize politics over people. Further notes the absurd attempt by the African National Congress to politicize the surge in violence, recognizes the ANC's inability to hold their national minister accountable for the failure to capacitate vital services, condemns the opposition parties in this House, including Good, the Patriotic Alliance and the EFF, for voting against the City of Cape Town's motion to devolve policing powers in order to make the city safer. Notes that such opposition undermines the safety of the city and the basic needs of the people of the Western Cape, and calls on this House to put safety and well-being of the people above narrow political interests. I so move.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, honourable members. Are there any objections to the motion? Just for the record, please allow me to put it to the House. Order. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Masipa.
Honourable House Speaker, I move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes the centenary of Pinelands, marking 100 years since its establishment as South Africa's first garden city. Acknowledges that the garden city model, inspired by Ebenezer Howard's vision and implemented locally by the Garden Cities Trust, transformed what was once drift, sand, and scrubland into a planned community promoting better housing and social conditions. Further notes that this historic achievement was built on principles of thoughtful design, green spaces, and community living, values that remain relevant as we confront today's human settlement challenges. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Masipa. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections, agreed to. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of the sitting and the orders in front of the House for today. But before we, is that a point of order? But when I'm concluding, then I'm going to say the House is adjourned. So what's your point of order, Honourable Side?
Honourable Speaker, I don't want to take us back because you are not chairing the session, but I want to bring a matter to your attention that has a bearing on Rule 60 and Rule 58. A ruling was made earlier, Honourable Speaker, that members can use offensive language freely, as long as it's not directed to a specific member. Now, if this is left unchallenged, it can set a precedent.
Okay. I want to interrupt.
In terms of Rule
order, member.
Yeah. So,
the Honourable Side, I respect the fact that you want to look at it, but there's a process, there's a mechanism where rulings can be challenged and rulings can be debated. So please follow that process. This is not for the House to debate a ruling or challenge. Honourable Side, is that a new point of order?
Chair, if I was going to be allowed to conclude, Speaker, I was going to say that I wanted to put it on record that we will be challenging this matter.
Absolutely, there is a process to do that, and I encourage that, and we can deal with it in that manner. Honourable members, you would have noted that in the motions without notice, I have allowed a condolences motion, which is ordinarily not allowed in terms of the rules. I want to use this opportunity to extend on behalf of this entire institution my condolences to the late Honourable Baines, who was a directly elected and nominated member to the National Council of Provinces representing the African National Congress and the people of the Western Cape. For that reason, I have allowed it to be put to the House. So in case anyone was wondering why I did that, I've also extended our condolences to the families, but I think it's important for the record that I also state and can keep you informed of what has already been done. With that being said, That brings us to the end of the sitting, and the House is adjourned.
Thank you.